Hey, welcome to episode number 29 of Killer POV. I am one of your co-hosts, Rob G. from FEARnet and Icons of Fright. Joining me as always is Rebekah McKendry from Fangoria.
How are you doing, Rob?
Doing great.
Doing great. I'm so shocked. I have gotten 2 sentences out by now without
2. Going on 3.
Mr. Elricus Interruptus joining us.
He's too busy drinking my beer as usual, so that's why.
He is
his mouth
pointing at
full.
himself in totally pretentious manner.
I come in peace.
Yes.
And you go in pieces.
Yes. Oh my God.
He swiped
This is how
my
you know you have the right
Blu-ray
show.
of Dark Angel this week, and
Have
I
you
told
never-
him
I had
was
never
like,
seen
you
this
have to
film.
watch it tonight.
We'll get to it.
I'd never seen the film.
Let me finish intros.
Hey, no, he just introduced himself. That was a bold intro.
All right,
One of the best taglines of all
Yeah,
time.
it is. Yes, well, that's Elric Kane. Who,
I did the tall blonde alien drug dealer from
Right.
the film, and I was responded to by the Dolph Lundgren of the table.
Our
Yes.
special guest is not Dolph Lundgren.
Oh.
He's even cooler.
We should get him at some point.
Would love to.
I've been described as the Dolph Lundgren.
the Dolph
I would say of the Signal team, you
Oh,
are the Dolph Lundgren.
for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
we have director Jacob Gentry here. Welcome, Jacob.
Hi, Rob.
How you doing, man?
Good.
He's the
Thanks for
director
having
of The Signal, one of the directors of The Signal, as well as The Last Goodbye, cool little indie flick that I like quite a bit. Who's in that again?
Faye Dunaway.
Yeah.
Carradine.
David Carradine.
Yeah.
Wow.
You must have stories.
I do, actually.
All right.
He's quite the chanteuse.
All right.
So-
We'll get to that. And you also did for MTV, you did 3 movies for MTV.
The
3,
trilogy.
Right? The trilogy.
My Super Psycho Sweet 16 trilogy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I actually like that first one quite a bit. I've never seen the third one,
That
though.
seems to be the concurrent opinion of people my age, is like, actually always has to go at the beginning of whether they like it or not.
It's because it's on MTV. People
Surprisingly,
always,
yeah. But it's great because there's like, when all those, 16, 17-year-old kids grow up to be, 30-year-olds.
Yes.
they'll start funding your movies.
The action.
Yeah, they'll be exacts in
Yeah.
that.
Well, if you talk to someone like, 15, 16 years older than me, they would say the same thing about Teen Wolf or something like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, so actually it's funny because we usually kind of, we always have a bunch of topics we'd like to tackle, and we try to cater our topic to our guest. And this all just kind of fell together because Elric had mentioned Jacob and was like, oh man, I've never met him before. I'd love to pick his brain because I know he's into sci-fi stuff.
And
Same
and
time,
sci-fi horror.
Yeah.
You have that kind of fringe where you're not sure which is more dominant. Which
yeah,
we'll
that's
talk
a
about.
subject we wanted to do. So this just kind of came together where I just asked Jacob if he'd come in. His favorite genre is sci-fi horror. So he seemed stoked to do it. And one of the things I want to compliment Jacob about, we've known each other for several years now. I think we met really early on before the Signal actually even came out through AJ and everybody else. And what I always remember is I actually met you for the first time. Actually, wait, not true. The first time we hung out was in New York, but I think I met you very briefly at a Weekend of Horrors in LA or something like that. Yeah, like for 2 seconds. But they were doing a signing for The Signal at like Forbidden Planet, the comic store.
Which is that still around?
I don't
I
know.
heard they closed down.
Yeah, either that or
cry.
they moved.
Yeah.
Oh, they closed down? I love that
something
place.
happened.
Yeah,
with
if you're
them.
still in New York, let us know what happened at Forbidden Planet. But anyway,
I'll be there next week. I'm just going to go by and look.
Yeah.
Because that's where the
You
Virgin
report
Megastore
back.
used to be. There was a Halloween store right there. The Strand was right there. It was a really cool little block.
Yeah, Union Square was like the
Yeah.
epicenter of happy place for me.
yeah, a lot of cool
And
stuff there.
This started with you complimenting him about something.
It's going to be a compliment. Yes, here it comes. I'm sorry.
I'm
So
impatient.
the point is, I went to they were doing an in-store signing posters and stuff, and it was the first time that I really got to meet and hang out with Jacob and AJ. And we all know how the AJ thing turned out, but
With him spanking you
Yes.
pretty much
on Facebook.
But the 2 things I loved was, one, there was a tagline on the Signal poster from Wes Craven. It was a quote of him saying, "Mark my words, this movie will explode." And I still have my poster somewhere, but Jacob wrote on mine, he crossed out this movie and wrote my name. So it says, "Mark my words, Rob G will explode."
Oh, that's funny.
Which I was like, oh, this guy's cool. And then we were walking to go get food or whatever. And I'd been doing Icons of Fright for maybe 2-3 years. It was still kind of early in the beginning. And the reason I knew that I was going to love this guy was because he's the first person ever that I'd interviewed, first director, filmmaker in that period that I've been interviewing people for Icons of Fright, that didn't once talk to me about his movie and instead was asking me like all these cool questions about the website. He's like, who's the coolest person you ever interviewed? And, what kind of movies do you like and this and that? Whereas like, and I don't mean this as an insult to filmmakers, because obviously you're in town and you're kind of have the spiel and you're used to
there to
telling
pitch your
people
stuff.
about your stuff. Like, oh, this is my movie and blah, blah, blah. Like you already knew that I loved the movie. and it didn't come up at all. And I was just like, whoa, this is like, this director actually gives a shit about me and is not just trying to get me to talk about his movie.
Feel warm and fuzzy.
So ever since that, and and AJ had that quality too, where we all just genuinely loved movies and had like this long philosophical conversation about them. So Jacob's the real deal. He loves this stuff just as much as we do. And he's going to be great for our topic of sci-fi horror.
No pressure.
No pressure at all after all that.
Very
Better
sweet
be
of you.
good.
And he also made an incredible bumper that we will post on the site for
Yes.
Fantastic Fest.
This
Really
week.
funny shit, and I saw it last night, so we'll make sure you can find that. So let's go before. Well, we usually start with what we've seen this week. It's a great way to get into things. I've seen a few things. So I wanted to start with Dark Angel because I hadn't seen it.
Oh my God.
And I think it might have been a cultural thing.
That's a bullshit title. It's I Come in
I
Peace.
Come in- thing.
Well,
I
no,
Come
I
in
think I
Peace.
don't think it came out. Ann Timpson, if you're listening, you can correct me, but I don't believe that film was ever on the VHS shelf when I lived in New Zealand because I'd seen a
Really?
bunch of other Dolph Lundgren films, never had heard of it. So
Now, there was a
I don't know.
follow-up one that also had, I think it was the same director, called Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that one? I don't think it ever made it to DVD, but if you get the chance, you have to see that one too.
I think
I
it
thought
might
this
be.
was-
It's Lance
was fun.
Henriksen with long hair as a bike gang leader, and it's got Brian Bosworth.
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Brian Bosworth
Yeah.
is Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. You need
That's
to
the
see,
tagline. Brian Bosworth is
Yes,
Stone
Stone
Cold.
you need to see that one as
Before
well.
we had a lot of spectacle in movies, that was the movie where the trailer had the motorcycle that came out of the building and into the helicopter, and that was like the money shot of the movie.
Yep.
And Bosworth was the Boz was pretty big at the time.
He has
Yeah.
a kick-ass mullet in it.
Stone Cold was a big one.
Yeah.
But Dark Angel's fun. It's it
Come in
really.
Peace.
I Come in Peace.
It was never released as Dark Angel in America ever.
Oh, really?
And when I have a videotape of it, so I don't understand why they keep putting it out here under that European title.
And it doesn't show up on the credits either. So
Does it? I don't
no,
know.
it says I Come in Peace.
I'm
straight
sure
up.
people are going to think you're talking about the Jessica Alba TV
I know.
show.
Yeah,
I know.
there you
Actually,
go.
somebody did on Twitter straight away. They said, "Are you talking about the show?"
Nope.
So,
Dolph Lundgren classic.
but you never see intergalactic drug lords. That's something
It's great.
that it's a fun idea.
It's
Yeah.
also the
You're
plot
looking
of-
for something deeper, and that's just not deep. It's just nope, just taking it to deal drugs.
I pointed out on Twitter that it's the exact same plot as Liquid Sky.
Yeah.
And Liquid Sky
God, you're
kind
right.
of predecessed it. So I'm thinking that I Come in Peace was kind of a ripoff of Liquid Sky.
Doesn't matter. It's
Liquid
still
Sky's like the Jodorowsky version of
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
They were like, no one's going to see this shit film. Let's do this. And
Yeah.
let's get Dolph Lundgren.
I got to ask you, since you just watched it for the first time, I picked up that Blu-ray, of course, and I watched the director talk about it.
Yeah, and he was like a stunt guy.
Yeah, he was like a stunt guy, but the thing that I found amazing was like it's supposed to be a $20 million movie. He only had something like 2 or 3,
Yeah.
something ridiculous. And then I was watching the movie, and I'm like, man, this dude directed the fuck out of this movie.
Talking about,
Yeah.
like Craig R. Baxley, isn't his name?
Yeah.
He did Action Jackson.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
With
That's
Carl
right.
Weathers.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So he's a damn good director. He
And
didn't
it's
have a
got
lot of money.
Some really cool effects in it with like the little flying thing that
The
he uses
CD.
to suck their
That's the
chest
thing.
out. And
There's some
yeah.
of this CD, and then like it cuts right to like a pool cue.
I think
like,
he
that's the
mentioned
thing.
he also
Like,
got a
it's
lot of
really well put
favors
together.
because he had done stunt work so often. So he was also calling on
like every
everything he could
guy.
get.
I
You know?
forgot the
Stunt guy.
vibrating
Yeah.
CD thing.
Yeah.
That was a really cool effect.
It's just a great film. Now that film's definitely sci-fi action and doesn't it'd be hard pressed to push that into calling it horror.
It's got a little bit
I call
of
it hard
gore.
because it's got a lot of slit throats, which
Yeah,
is not
that's
a few slit throats,
He
but it
kills
definitely
a lot of junkies. Or I guess they're not junkies when he starts.
right.
So, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
more sci-fi giallo, really.
That's
He
true.
does wear the black gloves.
That's a very valid
so,
point. So what?
I was
what else?
coughing about Brian Benben, thinking about Brian Benben's sweet shortness.
Oh my god, he's great.
What's
in
that
movie.
TV show that he was on?
Dream On.
Dream On.
Yeah,
Love that show. If I
Jo-
wasn't
and
choking
John
to death right
Landis
now,
had something to do with that show, if I remember
Really?
correctly.
I didn't get that show. I think I was a
I
little
loved
too
it.
young.
Too young.
How, you're the same age as me. Well, I guess you're a guy, so you were kind of into
Yeah.
that
I'm a
earlier.
guy.
I was just like, man, all he does is dream
guy.
about naked
I'm a
women.
man.
Yep, that was
Yeah,
a
but
guy
that's all you
show.
Wasn't too into it.
I got to be honest. That's really 90% of what we do, Becca, on air. I don't want to break it to
Sorry,
you.
guys.
We
in
think
our
about
head-
movies in between, and that's it.
Yeah, in our head, it cuts to a movie scene.
Exactly.
That's
It's
what-
Playing it out in your
That's
head
just so
right
valid.
now.
It pretty much does. But that film was really good. It's always fun it's rare now, like to rediscover films that you missed, because as kids we watched those ones the most, the Running Mans, the Predators. So when you see something that fell through the cracks, it's actually more surprising than anything. Genuinely, I was pretty shocked watching it, going, wow, my childhood's kind of a lie. Like I feel like it's kind of invalid, to be perfectly
I
honest.
Come in Peace has unraveled Elric.
Oh,
I could
God.
say that all year long. But I also thought the casting was also super smart, because look, you've got Dolph, and Dolph was cast once to be the giant He was cast to be this giant presence in Rocky to beat the hell out of Carl Weathers and then, take on Rocky. And he looked so big. And then in this film, well, for one, Brian Benben's like 4 foot. Then you've got Dolph. And then above Dolph, there's a guy who's a whole foot taller than Dolph. And he's literally almost 7 foot. I think they said 6'9".
Yeah.
And it's incredible. The presence that guy brings, the alien, the blonde alien. I guess he was an Olympic athlete.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Also,
it's a cool film.
Dolph only did 2 movies with black hair. It was that and The Punisher, which I think are his 2 best.
You want to hear something really fun?
Red Scorpion.
He had
Red
the
Sc-
same.
Did he have black hair in that?
No, blonde.
Oh,
blonde,
with black hair.
Yeah, those are the only 2.
Oh, the sub genre.
Oh, it's like Tom Atkins without a mustache. We talk about that sometimes.
It's a whole separate category.
It's a very specific stuff.
I love it.
I will say this.
Halloween 3.
You'll like
Right
this,
there.
Rob. His character name is my grandfather's name, Jack
Really?
Kane.
Jack Kane.
Jack Kane was
wow.
my grandpa,
Wow.
and his character is Jack Kane, spelt differently.
That
With
your
it.
grandpa just
this
became the
whole
coolest guy
movie-
He
ever.
did.
This
Dolph Lundgren's
movie
my grandfather.
sums up Elric.
It does. So I'm going to move away from that one now.
Okay, what
Very
else?
quickly. I watched, actually, one of the best surprises of the year so far. I watched AJ's recommendation, Resolution.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
It's
first
really
couple
good.
minutes, I was like, oh, they're doing this little effect, and it's going to be like, it had this little like burn effect that looked like something you would have done in Final Cut. So I thought it was just for style, and I was like, oh god, I'm not sure if I can get through this thing. And then, as soon as the chemistry kicks in, it's just beautiful chemistry between the two leads. Probably the best I've seen on screen this year, in terms of a two. Well, I haven't seen The Battery yet.
Yeah.
So, and then slowly, the slow burn dread and kind of lo-fi. It actually does relate to our topic today, I think. Kind of, it's lo-fi tech horror is kind of protruding in, and it's just a really good film. And I said I would never have watched this film ever based on the image that they were using to promote it
Because it
looked
looks like
Soul.
a torture film.
Yeah, it had
It
a
really
hand
does.
attached to it. So I would
But
have
it
gone
came
out of my
around the
way to
same time.
avoid
It was
that.
like mid 2000s.
No, this is
No, this
2012.
is new. This is a brand
This
new
is
movie.
this year.
Resolution?
Yeah, you
play
might be
it.
thinking of a different one.
My
Why?
former.
It's the junkie and
Yeah,
his
the guy
friend
he trains.
in
Yeah,
the cabin.
yeah, 2012.
Yeah.
It
I
was
swear
at Tribeca.
I saw this at a festival years ago.
No, those guys were in high school back then.
Oh my
Yeah,
god!
really young. Seriously.
Aaron
Yeah.
and Justin, they're really cool.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, they've been to my apartment. They're friends with my previous
They've
roommate.
been to your
Did I
apartment.
just see this at a festival
They're there
last
now.
year?
Right
I
now,
feel
they're in
bad
Rob's
that I didn't watch
apartment,
it then.
chained to.
They're in the.
It must be a different
basement,
one.
In the
No, I know I saw this at a festival.
You might have because it was at
Maybe it was just
Tribeca
last
a
year.
year ago.
Oh, it was at
It's possible,
Tribeca
yeah.
a year ago.
And
okay.
Yes,
and you've
we
got
don't have
baby
seasons
years.
here, so you can't.
You had a
you
baby
can't
this
tell.
year.
We
Years.
talked about this earlier. In LA, we have no seasons,
No
so I have
seasons.
nothing to judge time by.
Yeah,
it
that
just
was last
goes
year.
on.
And you have baby brain melt, I call it.
Exactly.
That's what Cronenberg
So-
calls it, baby brain melt. But no, the film was really great, and really genuinely cared about the character. It's something I talked about a few weeks ago with Night of the Comet, that it's been a long time since I gave a shit. No, more than that. I actually loved characters, and I kind of loved these characters too. And I think to actually love characters or really care that they maybe survive or care about them is really important to me now. And
We gotta
so,
watch The Battery. I think
Yeah,
you'll
I'm excited to see The
about
Battery
I'm
that
pretty
too.
psyched to see that
But
one.
this is I say this as something to filmmakers too. Be careful, even though you're going to be pushed on your cover art by usually the distributor. You have to be careful, because I would never watch that film. It's not that it was bad; it's not badly designed, but it's exactly the kind of film I'm trying to avoid watching nowadays because I just don't care anymore about torture films. So now, had that been, if they had found a different angle to kind of show that film, it would have been a different story. So thanks to AJ for that one. He doesn't
Right on.
often get it right, but this time. And then finally, me and Becca both, to segue into Becca, we saw Joseph Zito's The Prowler
we watched it
on
in
the big
16
screen
millimeter.
Yeah,
at Mike's house in the backyard. And,
Mike
it's,
Williamson. Yeah,
yeah, it's an interesting, obviously it's an interesting slasher. It has many faults. Especially in the pacing department. But I will say that I think Zito's a great director. I think he elevates all the films he makes.
There were two scenes that really pointed out to me what a good director he is. The phone scene and also the scene where I think it's it's just this weird like groundskeeper comes in and fires a shot, and then there's like this
They look lovingly at
30
each other.
second thank you with my eyes scene.
It's the false
It's the weirdest
end,
thing
yeah.
ever.
But the film, I will say that I actually think there is something kind of, I don't want to overly intellectualize this film, but I honestly believe that it was Zito saying, and probably Savini saying something about movie violence.
He's
And
over-intellectualizing the film.
No, I mean, I think the death scenes were held like 10 times longer, and that's not exaggeration. Literally each death was held about 10 times longer than they were in Friday 13th. I feel, and past the part that's actually visceral and you're enjoying the pleasure of watching death, and I think he was literally reacting to the the way we watch Friday the 13th films, which is like quick, just like U-Turn. When Oliver Stone made U-Turn, he said, I want to make the violence so ugly because that's what violence is. It's not pretty. I think Zito was saying, hey, if you're going to get a knife through your skull, I'm going to hold on it till it's uncomfortable to have to keep watching, and it's no longer fun and pleasurable. Now, what that does to the film is it kind of kills the pacing, and I think it made for maybe a less successful slasher, but I really believe if we could get an interview with Zito, I guarantee he would say something. I believe he would say that there was purpose to holding those shots.
Right.
We'll see.
I liked that it was this World War II killer, but his weapon of choice was a pitchfork. It was,
that's cool.
The
I thought that's fun.
government issue pitchfork.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, he was also but you didn't. He was a scarecrow too. He used to be a scarecrow.
Part.
Yeah, you missed the backstory. He was a scarecrow who came back. He was Larry Drake. He was the Scarecrow Prowler.
You got the wrong movie.
I missed it.
Man.
I didn't
He
watch
did use
it.
a knife once. So
Okay.
yeah,
Freaking
the
key.
guy
I don't know, I think
mixes
she-
up your
movies.
Yeah, no, I know. I like the film, but it was divisive. I would say a lot of Brian
The only
Collins
reason I
didn't
didn't
like
go
it.
is
You didn't like it.
yeah, because I told Becca I literally just got the Blu-ray and watched it like 2 weeks ago, and it's all right, but it's not a movie I want to see again within 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, that I agree.
You know,
We
it's
have
like-
the Blu-ray, but I hadn't watched it yet because it's one of those that I saw a while back and it never really struck me or stood out. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I got the Blu-ray, the Prowler. I'll get there at some point. So, yeah.
Though it did make me realize that redheads do make the best last girl, final girls. I completely believe that. I think final girls should only be redheads now. So you're in luck.
Okay.
You have a chance tonight.
Okay, guys, I'm making it to the end. Sorry, boys. You're down. You're going down tonight. So.
I don't know what that is either. But anyway, that's what I've been
The only
watching.
one.
Yeah.
So the other things I watched this week, in addition to the Prowler, I watched The Believers from 1987. Martin
That
Sheen.
wasn't True
movie.
Believers?
yeah.
True Believers? No?
No,
No,
just
Believers,
The
right?
Believers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had this discussion with somebody and they were like, no, it's not called that. And it was a completely different movie.
Oh,
but
True Believer is the one that came around at the same time with James Woods, right? Is that
Oh,
the thing?
yeah,
so.
yeah.
I
I
That's
have
probably
not
it.
famous-
seen True Believer.
You know, the lawyer that Jeff Bridges talks about in Big Lebowski, Ronald Kuby. You know, when he
Okay.
says that, it's like
I
That's
have not
hilarious.
seen this
I didn't
movie,
even know that
but,
connection. That's funny.
I acquired a DVD copy of The Believers from 1987, which is Martin Sheen's wife dies. And this was the most funniest part of the movie. His wife dies, and therefore he's bankrupt, and he has to move into New York City because he's too poor to afford his
That's awesome.
house outside of New York City
Nice.
anymore. That was possibly the most hilarious
So it
part
is
of the
science
movie.
fiction. That's
It is,
cool.
yeah.
Go
I like it.
80s New York. Yeah, it's very much like this is what I have to settle for living on the Upper East Side because I can no longer afford my house in Jersey. So really strange.
Wall Street prequel.
But anyway, so he moves to New York City because his wife passes away and he's trying to make ends meet with his son. And anyway, he is a cop who investigates, or more if he's like a cop psychologist. And he gets involved with this case that is Santeria, where all of these people are being sacrificed to, it's a highly, highly fictionalized version of Santeria where they're being sacrificed and all this like crazy voodoo culty. It's not even voodoo, it's voodoo-esque stuff. Again, highly fictionalized Santeria, but it's not bad. I actually really enjoyed it. It's well paced. The plot was good. Just don't, take that as what you think, Santeria actually is, but it was actually a fun movie. And I, last night, while you guys were watching Gone with the Pope,
Gone with the Pope was so freaking good.
I
It's just
wanted to see American Hippie in Israel.
okay. The American
Have you
history
seen Gone
is
with
a
the
little.
Pope yet,
I don't
Jacob?
even. I've never even heard of that.
Oh man! Well, what's the
Oh,
scoop
my
behind
gosh.
it? Is it?
Bob
it's-
Morawski from Grindhouse Releasing, the editor of all the Evil Dead films, he literally found a film called Mafia Massacre Style,
Which I have a copy
Massacre.
of.
Right, he had found that. It's a pretty straight ahead gangster film, but it's cool, and it's by this lounge singer called Duke Mitchell, who also was in some old 50s films.
And it was a really hard to find film. It
yeah,
still
hard to
is
find.
like I had to buy a bootleg.
But it's straight ahead. It's a straightforward. It was like him trying to do Godfather. So he started poking around, and he ended up meeting the guy's son and wanted elements for that film. And his son said, well, Duke, before he died, had finished another film, but he just hadn't cut it all together, and some parts weren't working, and he ran out of money. I mean, Bob gets in there and basically spent the last, I guess him and Sage Stallone spent maybe the last few years constructing it. And one of the reasons it's so amazing is also probably because you're taking a contemporary editor, one of the best, and applying it to a guy who made a film who hadn't finished making his film. So it
was
opens with
sitting
some
in his
soft focus
garage,
shots.
right?
Oh, bits of it, but it was all over the place. So he had to
Just
edit
wait till you
it.
see the trailer to Gone with the Pope. It's just
But it's not that.
all
Yeah,
about
right
the
up your
It's
alley.
insane.
Yeah, right up
it's
your
not
alley.
the so bad. We've talked before. It's not so bad. It's good. It's got more heart than I mean, it opens with a guy leaving prison and kissing every single one of his like good friends he's made in prison, like kissing them on the lips between bars, and with so much heart that you're like literally like, whoa, I've never seen that scene in my life, and like you believe it because you've been in prison for 20 years. It's really fantastic. It's crazy and weird as well and funny, but it's just. But it'll never. I talked to Bob about it last night, and he said he doesn't know if he ever will put it on DVD because he's so in love with the fact that audiences respond, and he's just so sad that once people buy a DVD, you know, it just sits on your shelf and you don't watch it in the same way. And so he said he gets kind of a lot of hate emails about like, give it to someone else then if you're not going to release it, but he wants to tour the print. And I think that's really cool.
I think it's nice to have things that are like hard to find.
Yeah.
Because everything is so accessible now that it doesn't, there's not a lot of things that are special. You know, that's why going to see like the Beaver trilogy or something is like kind of an exciting thing because it's like you can't just get it anywhere.
Yeah.
Or like Miami Connection being released by Draft House is like, that's a special thing, you know?
My husband came home from this screening last night, and again, he woke me up to announce to me that he had Joey Ramone's copy of Devil Times 5, which he apparently won last night at the screening. But after that, he told me, I was expecting, because I hadn't seen it before, because, you know, this one's like impossible to see. And I was like, how was it? And I was expecting the so bad it's good thing that we get with like Miami Connection and things like that.
Whoa.
And he gave the exact same spiel that Elric just did, where all of a sudden he got kind of glassy-eyed, and he was like, that film had so much passion. You just don't see that in filmmaking anymore. I mean, it wasn't that good in parts, but it had so much passion.
We got to go next time.
Yeah, the first one, the hippie one was so
many times now.
The hippie one had amazing scenes, and it was just more like, how did this get made? You know, it's that kind of movie. But this Gone with the Pope was something special. Makes you wish there was more Duke Mitchell out there. I mean, he's one of those actors, and it's funny and it's kind of ridiculous. And I also won a copy of Cannibal Holocaust last night, which I thought was. I went up there and he goes, "Are you a fan of like striptease and are you a fan of Joey Ramone?" And I said, "You want me to pick the prize?" And I said, "Just pick it." And he pulls out Cannibal Holocaust, and I go, "You got the right guy." I looked around the crowd, I went, "This was for me." So, thank you.
And then, ironically, this morning, Morgan Peter Brown said that you were the Cannibal Holocaust of people.
Yes.
So it
that's
gels.
your new thing.
Yeah, I'm an abysmal found footage human being that needs to go to court to prove I didn't kill a turtle.
Though, animal killer.
That's cool. I'll take it.
But while you guys were at the screening last night, I decided I was going to watch The Haunting from 1999. Not the original.
The Lily Taylor one?
The Lily Taylor one, because I didn't.
Chris Kattan.
Yeah.
Jan de Bont.
Didn't remember it. And
Jan
I
de
was
Bont.
suddenly like, you know, I don't even recall this movie. I recall not thinking very much of it, but I'm going to watch it again. Not that bad.
No, wrong.
It did not piss me
Lily
off
Taylor
as bad as it did.
was in acting jail until The Conjuring for even being part of that film.
She was not.
No, she's good.
that
The actors
bad.
are fine. It's just CGI was just
No, the CGI,
abysmal.
like the kids like screaming in the bed and things like that. It was weak. It was bad CGI considering it's 1999. We were doing a little bit better by then.
Yeah.
But it was not as bad as I remember it.
I don't remember it. I saw that, but the one I liked around the same time was
House on Haunted Hill. I mean, these
That's
were all
way
those
more
like
playful.
what was the company? Platinum Dunes that was doing all these.
No, Dark Castle.
Dark Castle. Thank you,
that was
Platinum Dunes.
pre-Platinum.
Forget that. Dark Castle was doing all these because they did like 13 Ghosts and House on
Yeah,
Haunted Hill. And compared to what they were doing in 13 Ghosts and House on Haunted Hill, The Haunting is bad.
But it was a huge budget, right? I mean, The Haunting was a big
It
budget
had to
movie.
be.
Yeah.
It's got. Oh gosh, what's
It
his
didn't
name?
really have a lot of like mood or tone or you know, it was really confused as far as that was concerned. It was like it had like kind of like this strange action movie quality to it, even though it wasn't an action movie.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
it's
mean?
also,
like,
it's a little conflated of why they're there because they're supposed to be part of this sleep study. And it was, but there's never like any real study going on. It was a little, that part I was kind of like, your premise is a little bit bad, but the scares were
Jan de
good.
Bont was kind of in movie jail after that too. After Speed 2 and that, it was kind of like he hadn't done a lot after that.
What did he do after that? After
I think he did one of the Laura Croft movies.
Okay.
Oh,
Wow. Then we kicked him out of our country and sent it back to where he belonged.
But
Actually, I have no idea where he's from.
no,
but-
I mean he's one of the greatest DPs that's
yeah.
ever lived. I mean, you know, his
Yeah.
work in
It's all-
Basic Instinct with Steadicam is just
moving camera was what-
remarkable.
yeah.
And of course Die Hard.
Yeah.
I mean,
wow.
he's one of the best DPs ever lived. So.
Yeah.
nice.
Was that it?
And,
Yeah,
and
that's
along
what I
with
watched.
Rutger Hauer, it's what Verhoeven brought with him from Amsterdam,
Uh-huh.
from Holland.
Yeah. I like
Well,
that.
yeah, I've
fine.
got two, but before that, Jacob, we obviously say what we've seen in the last week, but you don't have to stay just to the last week. Anything recently that you've seen genre-wise that's kind of cool that you would recommend or want to talk about?
I don't know if I've seen anything genre-wise other than, I watched Ray Donovan. I've watched the whole thing. I guess that's not really genre. It's really dark, but
I want to see that, but no spoilers.
And I did watch Pain and Gain, which has a lot of. It made me feel like a torture porn movie. I guess I'm not really, the torture porn. Have you guys seen Pain and Gain?
Not yet. No.
It's kind of like drinking tequila and red wine together. It's like you have a little buzz, but you also feel really, really weird inside, and it makes you. I mean, it's just because it's like a Fargo kind of story, like a true Fargo story.
Yeah.
And there is, and they are like horrible killers in this movie.
Right.
Oh, weird! I didn't get that from the trailer. From
That's
the
what
trailer,
I'm saying.
I
It's
thought
a Michael Bay movie, but
workout
it's
guys.
like Mark Wahlberg's character is as sort of goes as dark as like the characters in Fargo.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
That's
with this
so not in the
this
trailer.
strange tone that's supposed to be like you're having fun with it.
Yeah, it seems very comedic.
So it is. I mean, there are sections of it where when you see it, you'll be like, okay, he was right. This is a little bit in the genre because you're just like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to feel right now when they're chopping up these.
Oh wow! They go there. Okay, I'm going to watch it now. I'm going to actually watch
What the
it.
hell?
Yeah.
It's a true. It's like this true story,
story.
that is really horrific. But
Was-
it's this strange Michael Bay tone.
Was
I don't
he
even know
right
how to
for it? You
explain
think?
Huh?
Do you think somebody else would have brought a better tone, or did it work with Michael Bay?
I can't, it's like watching Trapped in the Closet. I don't know if I love it, hate it. I don't know how to feel. I don't know if there's a
It's
sense of
just bizarre.
irony. Like
Okay,
I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel in the
Right.
movie. I don't know what the intention of the tone is. So it's just. I mean, obviously he can make shots look good.
Yeah.
But he has a little bit of a bro kind of mentality to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you see it, I don't even know what genre you would put it in. But if you'd put, there are sections of Fargo that you would consider to be, almost like a horror film in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It almost gothic,
bodies
dark.
in the wood
Wood
chipper,
chipper.
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And
Circa Wood Chipper Massacre. Watch
there's
Wood
definitely
Chipper
horrific
Massacre.
elements to it. And I don't even know. The Rock is a genius. I don't
Yeah.
know. I cannot
makes
wait.
everything better.
I can't wait till he gets to be in a movie that's like a really, really good movie. I mean, he's been in some quality movies,
Yeah.
but nothing where it's like a director just goes, I'm going to make the ultimate movie where Dwayne Johnson really gets to show how awesome he is.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
So I saw two things, and the second actually leads right into our topic. But the first, I have obtained, thanks to our friends at Scream Factory, the Amityville box set with the
Right.
first three movies.
Yes, I got that too. I haven't started watching
excited.
it. It looks awesome though.
The difference
did
is
not
I
get it.
got a 3D TV, so I already put in Amity 3D just to test it out. It looked pretty awesome. Elric and I have yet to watch it, but we will.
I need to watch it.
But I rewatched the first movie, which I haven't seen in years. And I assume that if you're listening to this, you've probably at least heard the story of Amityville or seen it.
We've
or
talked
read
about
the
it
book.
we
before on
talked
here.
about it.
Yeah,
a
we
ton.
have. It's all right. I don't know if it holds up as. It's weird because you have this. I think we were touching on this a few weeks ago. How, when you're young, you're very sensitive to things, especially things you're seeing for the first time. And I just remember that. I mean, being from Long Island and the fact that it took place where I lived and everything, and it's just like everything about it was like really spooky and scary to me. And now it's like you see two red flashing eyes in the window, and it's not really as creepy as I remember when I was 12.
Yeah, that seems incredibly scary when you first see it. But then again, I always defend these films that say, like, hey, who cares? It's about when you first saw them.
Yeah.
That's what these movies are made for. As a filmmaker, you're making it for that experience, not for its longevity, which is really out of your control.
Right.
And how it will age, because I remember that scene literally jumping, like double taking, like what just happened?
Yeah,
Did I
yeah.
just see those eyes, And
Yeah.
so I totally know what you mean, though. I just
Yeah.
love the way the film feels.
Yeah,
I think the dating of it just feels great.
Yeah, it's definitely of that era, and Scream Factory did a good job with it. The sound, I mean, there was a lot of scares that were there just because of the sound mix and all. And again, I'm fascinated that one particular film just spawned this ridiculous franchise with like.
That
There's
franchise
no
makes
one
no
dies
sense.
in the original, right?
There's
not even a body count in that
with the
movie.
exception of the opening,
Yeah,
which
with
is
the
like the
kid,
recreation
the
of the
original story.
DeFeo family.
Steiger gets
But
out of there?
do people die
What's
in the
that?
second
Does
one?
Steiger get out?
I thought doesn't he have like a heart attack or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he survived
I
that
don't
film or
know if
not.
he-
That's a good question.
Yeah, because then they just say that
flies.
he's on
Oh.
vacation when she's looking for him.
Yeah,
priest.
people do die, but they don't die in the house because like there's some stuff with the. Am I even thinking of? No, I'm thinking of the second one
Yeah.
because there's a
Second one's
nun
bad
who
shit. I haven't
gotten
dies
to
and
that
the
yet.
preacher dies, and yeah, that's the one with the guy from Rocky whose name's escaping me,
Oh, what's his name? Oh no, I just drew a blank.
Oh,
too.
yeah,
The
yeah,
guy
yeah.
that plays Paulie.
who beats his wife. and
Who's
then,
totally
Robert
miscast
Young.
in that
and
film.
then the kids have
Yeah,
sex.
it's totally miscast.
It's also a
Burt
weird
Young,
franchise.
Burt Young.
Burt
Yeah,
Young,
Burt
sorry.
Young.
Thank you.
I was looking at you, Robert. It's also a weird franchise because I think at some point in the franchise they weren't allowed to use the DeFeo story, so it had to be like the story of the story. So it had to be about characters that were in the house,
and that's
that
still
weren't-
going on now.
It
Like
couldn't
there's-
be the true story.
Yeah, they're
it's-
fractioning. Now you'll see that they're being made, and one person owns the actual rights to the family, one person owns the rights to
that's
the house or
crazy.
the franchise. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Just kill it for a while.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. And actually, I'm glad that we didn't watch, because Elric was supposed to come over to watch 3.
Because I want to watch them all in a row. That's like my life dream.
Yeah, so now I got to watch 2 to catch up before we get to that.
Two's pretty.
Two's
yeah,
awesome.
It's a
I remember
fascinating
it being
movie.
batshit crazy.
It's
It
just
is. It is.
bizarre.
Yeah.
We talked about it a few weeks ago, but
Yeah. So I saw that, and then the other thing, which honestly, this is the reason I wanted to do a sci-fi horror movie, because I love a specific franchise so much, and I defend it, especially because I think the third one's the best. But I rewatched Scanners 1, 2, and 3, and there are 5 of them, which I own all of. But
the third one's better than the first one.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
I own it on VHS and I have never watched it.
Elric is trying to scan me now for saying that.
Until Rob said that, and I have to go back and watch it now.
Yeah. No, I'll be honest. And I know this is kind of blasphemy because I love David Cronenberg, but I think this is also because I saw all the movies kind of out of order when I was really young. And the concept of it, like, everyone's just like, why do you like Scanners 3, The Takeover, so much?
Well, Cronenberg, did he even have anything to do
No,
with
he
3?
just did the first one. So I saw the third one, and I love the third one because the third one's more of like an action horror sci-fi thing. They give you the premise right off the bat. And I always described it as like, it's like X-Men if like every mutant had the power to blow each other's heads up. Like there's a brother and a sister. The brother accidentally kills somebody and ends up going to a monastery to live his life in peace. The sister tries an experimental drug and starts going crazy and getting scanners together to try to take over the world. So the brother has to come back and fight the sister. And I'm like, this is freaking awesome. I mean, as a 12-year-old, it's like the greatest movie ever made.
I'd always said, number one, I don't know if I've seen Beyond 1. I think I've seen bits of 2.
Yeah.
But number one, the issues I had, and we'll be talking about Cronenberg, no surprise, in the show. And one of his films is one of my favorites. But, Scanners, one of the reasons it never completely worked for me is because I think the lead actor isn't frankly very good.
Yeah,
Michael
no, I agree with you.
Ironside?
And that Michael Ironside's
not Michael.
gold.
He's like the main villain.
But the main
Oh, yeah.
guy, kind of like Crime Wave by Sam Raimi and Tepper. It's like if Bruce Campbell had been the lead of Crime Wave,
which they wanted.
well, yeah, that film would be a totally different film.
Yeah.
I felt this too. I felt like, okay, I think this has somehow been miscast.
No,
and
I agree with you.
Just didn't quite work, and that always slows down the pacing and the emotional kind of connection to it.
It's a really good, strong premise. And I rewatched the first 3. Shout Factory put out 2 and 3 this week. The first one is, it's kind of boring. It's one of my, I like it because it's Cronenberg, but it's one of my least favorite Cronenberg movies.
He's got a
From that
gun.
early period.
Every night, he's got a gun.
So that one's good. 2 is kind of boring as well, but because it's almost like a remake of the first one, and they try to set the story like 10 years later, where it's like the kids of the scanners from the first one. 3 is just like batshit crazy, and that's the one I love.
Is that where it ended? 3?
No, there's a 4 and 5, and let me just throw. All I have to tell you is the titles. I don't even have to tell you what they're about. Scanners 4 is actually called Scanner Cop.
Wow.
Nice.
All it is.
Awesome.
It's
Sold.
a cop that's got scanner powers.
Van Damme?
What? No. And the fifth one.
Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
The fifth one is the only one that's consistent. It's a sequel to Scanner Cop called Scanners: The Showdown. So it's the same character, and in that one, it's a scanner serial killer versus the Scanner Cop, which is awesome. And it was released in Europe as Scanner Cop 2.
Wow.
So I love that Scanners 5 is actually Scanner Cop 2 in certain parts of the world.
I love when
So-
they just have to use the name recognition so
Yeah.
they can just make a completely other franchise
Yeah,
separate from the
It's
movie.
great.
Yeah.
So it's almost like Cronenberg made this one movie that I'm sure he's not happy that it got franchised the way it did.
I'm sure he's
But-
happy when he goes to the mailbox.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gets the checks for it. But I think they're great. I mean, it's such a cool little idea. It goes back to I'm a huge comic book fan. So there's like a similar story in a comic called Rising Stars where, Scanners is just like there was X amount of couples and women that used a drug for pain. And then their babies were all born with this weird kind of, extrasensory kind of power, so to speak. And there's 237 of them out there. At least that's what they say at the beginning of the first Scanners.
And
So
do we know
I
when
think that's amazing.
When is Vincenzo Natali remaking it?
Is he the one that's remade?
Just
No.
totally making that up. I didn't even know it was being
because
remade.
He
I
kind
just,
of sounds
actually-
like the perfect guy.
He
It
does.
would be
He does.
good.
It'd
Actually,
be him or
I
you,
have one of
Jacob.
his kind of rare
It'd be one of
films
you.
on my list.
I know, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the person I want to talk to is Darren Bousman because he was supposed to remake it for quite a while.
Are you freaking serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a couple of years back, yeah.
I didn't even know
I have
that.
never seen
That's
him
crazy.
go into sci-fi.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Well, I mean, Repo's kind of sci-fi.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, it has some overtone. I just think, someone like Vincenzo's career. We'll talk about him too. Canada and sci-fi horror.
Yeah, I've got a couple of his
Interesting.
films on my list.
Interesting.
Who else wants to go?
I say
I got my scanner stuff out of my system. Now I'm happy.
You've sold me. I want to do like
Right?
a weekend where I just
Yes.
watch
Come
Scanner's
over. Let's
weekend.
watch all 5 movies.
like the Planet of the Apes.
The
movies,
Scanner
you know?
Cop ones are only on VHS, which of course I own. So
Oh,
So we're
that might
safe.
be VHS night.
That's a legit like deep cut.
I say we go
Right.
all night with all 5 of them.
I'm willing.
We do
Okay.
We
this.
should do a whole podcast
I'm
on
game,
just
guys.
the Scanners
Scanners movies?
franchise.
I'd love to do that.
Let's define what our topic's going to be. Like, obviously, we're going to say somebody asked a question online. I'm not sure what their name was.
Oh yeah,
But
I think it might have been BJ who asked.
They kind of
about-
said,
BJ Kalancho?
sci-fi
Yeah, let me look
horror
up.
versus horror sci-fi. We're definitely going to be talking mostly about sci-fi horror. Horror sci-fi, I'm going to guess we would be thinking like Jason X as a horror film with a sci-fi tacked on so you can send them the fuck to space. Not very compelling, usually because it doesn't feel very organic. Science fiction, where it has a horrific element to it, circa Alien and things like that, seems to be a lot richer.
Yeah.
Ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume that's where we're kind of.
Yeah,
going
yeah.
from.
It was actually one of the questions was from BJ, and she asks, "When does a sci-fi film fall into horror sci-fi? Why is Aliens regarded as horror but not 2001?" So, I guess we'll define. To me, it's like I guess if there's usually if it's an alien story that involves monsters, creatures, anything that kind of is a little off kilter and not human tends to, in my opinion, tends to fall in.
If you want, I actually found this really great little sort of distinction between those genres because I get kind of annoyed because I'm such a sci-fi fan that it always gets lumped in with fantasy.
Right.
And those
Okay.
two things are very disparate.
Completely.
Yeah.
They're
That is
not-
interesting.
They're not the same thing at all. Because, science fiction is like in the rule, like Orson Scott Card says, it's like science fiction is something that's uses the rules of our world, but it's something that's theoretically possible, and something that happens. There's a like a future. It's like the future of our world, or it could be the present of our world. But like Philip K. Dick talks about, but it has like the like a conceptual dislocation, like a something that's very like a new idea that's presented in the middle of it. But I wrote this down because I really thought it was really interesting. I read it. It was like science fiction is the unknown is to be understood and thereby changed. Fantasy is the unknown is to be loved for its strangeness, and horror is the unknown is to be feared. And then, of course,
That's actually perfect because
Yeah.
we're
Who's that
talking about
from?
they're saying to fear. That's how we
I
could
don't
define
have
it.
the bibliography.
No problem.
Sorry. I'll get
Cite your
you that.
sources.
I know.
And within that, I think there's something about setting the science fiction / horror in a contemporary setting that really adds to when it's a horror. Whereas some of these dystopian films, even though they might have horror elements, whether it's a Mega Man, Logan's Run, it feels less horror because it's less palpable because it's set in a future. But even The Purge, to be honest, was less scary to me because it was set in an alternative universe. It's not real to me at all.
I don't
But
think
it's
that
still
that
the
makes a
rules of our.
difference.
It's still the rules of our world.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's why
just
there's not a
like-
lot of horror. A lot of horror fantasy movies.
Right.
Like there's not a lot that you can name. There's a lot of sci-fi horror movies, but
Right.
As far as like horror fantasy movies, I mean, we could probably come up with a
like
few.
Troll 2 kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, because
Yeah.
because most horror movies that at least the ones I can think of that are the most sort of canon horror movies
Visceral.
are ones that are almost the best ones are usually set in the present day.
It's got to be grounded in what we understand.
It's in our world. It's in something that and the buy-in is usually that there's some element of horror that is intruding on our own lives, and that's what's scary to us. If it's grounded, if it's set in some far off world like Game of Thrones or something, it's not. You don't have that sort of fear that you would otherwise. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's exceptions to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of one. I can't off the top of
know.
my head.
It's
What's
hard,
a
right?
fantasy horror?
Like I guess maybe Reign of Fire, but that's still futuristic, so it's dystopic and it's still like the
Army of
future of
Darkness
our
is
world.
more.
But
that
it's still
than-
grounded
that's-
because he's from present day.
And that's
true.
also a Three Stooges movie. It's great. I
That's
love
true.
it.
Yeah.
But I do like the distinction. I think that's a really valid one, that we can go to anything. I always think horror, like people look for to try to define, like we did with Irreversible, and it is hard. But I think if it makes you feel dread or fear or scared or somehow viscerally disturbed, I feel like it's touching on horror, and that could be in a lot of different genres. It doesn't mean it's going to be at the horror side of the video store, of course, but obviously, like the benchmark, it seems like to me, like when I was looking over the ones that I love, we didn't even have to really spend time on Alien, but Aliens, just like it so perfectly fits that border of the world. It is the haunted house in space,
Absolutely. I mean, Alien is a perfect example. I sort of feel like the ultimate. Well, there's two, but I was debating which one would be more like perfect example of sci-fi horror would be the Terminator, because that's a movie that has time travel, robot apocalypse. But the framework of the movie, the actual structure of the actual movie you're watching, is a slasher movie. That is a straight up and down slasher movie to the fullest degree. But it's all, it elicits in your imagination all this stuff with all these sci-fi elements. Time travel,
and
robots,
action,
apocalypse.
It's the same with Predator, right down to the final girl being Arnold. But
Predator feels a little more action to me because of the fact that the people that are fighting against the Predator are Marines. And that's maybe where the distinction between Alien and Aliens comes in, because they actually have, you sort of think of horror as being something that like is personal to you, and you're not a worthy foe for the villain.
And they
or
had
something,
two future governors in that one film. That is something.
He was a sexual
Now, I
Tyrannosaurus.
do think the first time, this is why we talk, movies are so funny. What we were just talking about the first time you see a movie, think about the fucking Predator. The first time you see that film,
I was terrified.
You weren't prepared for what was under the mask.
Yeah.
Now, then it becomes a thing, and years later you can watch sequels and it looks like a Predator. But the first time the thing comes off, you have no idea what and that's why movies are so great. They have to be, that first experience is like unparalleled.
Fear of the unknown.
Exactly. And Alien too, of course. I mean, nothing can. I had this friend, I'll never forget watching Alien, and I always like it when we have our first experience. And we had the VHS player, and we're pretty new on our block. And I had a friend who lived down the street, and we make films together still. And he was allowed to come watch the movie, but his parents had seen it. When the scene happened with the chest burst, they said when that comes up at the so-and-so minute mark, he has to stand in the corner of the room with his back to the screen.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this is going to fuck him up so much worse. Like, this guy's hearing all of us scream. He's just imagining what's happening. So,
my God, it's like Blair Witch.
That memory of seeing him in the corner just made it so great. but that film's it's incredible, and it had one of the best twists too. We talked about performances last week with AJ, and we're talking about like Ian Holm.
villain performances.
Ian Holm's performance
is just like
you just never see it coming.
Yeah,
and also that's an idea of introducing AI. Introducing the robot element as a surprise in the movie. Right. Sorry, spoiler to anyone who hasn't seen it.
You should have by now. Come on.
You don't even deserve to listen to the show. It's like, sorry.
Yeah.
But no, it's fascinating. So so if we're defining like that, let's talk about ones that we can mention some of the big ones. But I do want to hear, obviously, from Jacob's view, ones that may be influenced directly. I mean, I would be shocked if Videodrome wasn't an influence on The Signal, and not in a derivative way at all. But I'd be surprised personally. I guess everything's subconscious anyway. But
I don't know if it was really.
Wait, I need to get shocked. Hold on. That's my shock face.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's definitely elements of that, but I mean, I think it's actually kind of our take on the zombie genre. Even though they're not, we always say that like in zombie movies, they're mindless killers, because they're undead. And our movie is about mindful killers. It's like, they are very conscious of what they're doing. And that's sort of the whole thing. But the structure and the way that the movie's laid out is like a zombie movie, except for the fact that like you can't really assemble a group of people in a small environment and the zombies are outside. It's that the people inside may be zombies even if they haven't gotten bitten, and you don't ever know. And so it kind of feeds into that kind of the thing kind of thing. The thing kind of thing.
And you hint, there's like one scene where you hint that, because I remember watching it for the first time, not knowing where it was going. And also I was unaware that there were 3 directors when I initially watched it.
I didn't know that till recently.
There's a part where like in your segment actually where I forgot the name of the character, but it's the husband, and he's like, his wife goes in there to cry, and then he like kind of comes up. So it's almost like that tease, like, wait, are they also zombies? Or are they going to get up after they get killed by the crazy people? But it was just kind of like almost like a quick little fake out to make you think that.
Right.
So I feel like subconsciously I had zombies on the brain anyway. And then that one little scene is like, is it zombies? No. It's not exactly that.
Yeah,
So,
it definitely plays with the Videodrome idea of like the inundation of media. You know, I mean, like it's all around us. You know, and it can make us go crazy. And even now, more so than we made the movie. It's such
that's the funny thing about Videodrome too, right? You think about Videodrome, and then you go now and go, oh my god, his films often are like that.
You know what's weird? I mean, I'm a professor in addition to working for Fango, and when I teach a class that's just specifically on horror films. It's horror film history. And I always do a unit on Cronenberg. And when I taught it last semester, I showed Videodrome and Existenz back to back.
Which is playing tonight at New Beverly. Tonight and tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm like curating as I go. My students are so freaking lucky. Anyways, they connected more with Existenz. They were all kind of just like, Videodrome, but and these are sophomores in college. They all loved Existenz, thought it was such a stronger film and really connected with it. And I guess it's just much more of like the video game and the becoming part of the video game. And
they fear James Woods' vagina. They fear James Woods' vagina.
Videodrome has a lot of obtuseness.
But they seemed really confused by like I was having to explain like the indie channels and, kind of the cable channels that we used to get when we were kids. And I was trying to explain the video market, the VHS market.
Why Debbie Harry's sexy.
Why Debbie Harry is sexy.
The idea of a snuff movie.
Yeah, snuff movies. Yeah. And it was like I was explaining so much to them. Yeah. And but they just immediately grabbed to Existenz and was like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" And
but that's a good thing. Yeah, that shows that he's always relevant. Cronenberg's always found a way. He has misfires too, like anyone, but he always has a way of just being before things happen, and always had. I mean, Rabbit's just it's insane.
Well, when I was wrestling between the two movies I was just speaking about earlier, between Terminator and the other one, it was The Fly, because I think The Fly might be the ultimate sci-fi horror movie. I think it's like a perfectly constructed movie.
It might be the best adaptation besides the thing ever made.
It's not even really an adaptation, because the original is just a straight up horror movie and almost really stilted and what have you. But this, he really brought in like the science fiction element, because it's about the hubris of technology and invention, which, you go back to like what would be considered probably the first science fiction horror thing of all time would be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, right? That'd be the first, because that's basically like man's playing God with technology and creating a monster, literally. Yeah. So it's just like the most perfect sort of originator, the godfather of all science fiction horror, be Frankenstein's story, So,
I didn't think that.
And The Fly is kind of a strange, like not autoerotic, but he's doing it to himself,
Autoenomic.
Autoenomic. Oh, I love it. But what's great about that movie is that it really is. His biggest mistake was just jealousy, and that was a huge part of like when we were making The Signal was just the idea of like your everyday fears, your everyday desires, your everyday like human flaws. Like how can those, like if they're exacerbated to an infinite level, you know what I mean? Like would that cause you to act out in violence?
Yeah.
The Fly it's also, I think Cronenberg by keep repeating his body horror themes that he was at that point, I think he really found the perfect material. I think that's the weird thing about adaptation. When I say he's adapting The Fly, he's taking one element out of that whole film. He's taking The Fly and the idea of to transport, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
But then he brings such I don't know, his films feel so personal to me. I feel like Cronenberg's always been able to do that. Even when he's doing a period piece, there's something in there that always feels deeply personal and that connects,
I think screenwriters should study that movie.
Yeah.
I was looking at it the other day and I was like, oh my God, this is so perfect. It's like he dispenses with all like the stuff that usually weighs down the beginning of movies and the setup. And he literally just, the opening shot is him going, come back to my lab and look at my transporters. You know what I mean? And then he gets back there and it's through him being such a, being Goldblum.
Yeah.
Goldblum's amazing, but
and here and there, it'd be another subgenre we could also discuss is like hero as monster. So your hero at some point in that film becomes the monster of that film. It's that's rare. And it's hard to pull off. You need someone as charismatic as Jeff.
Because that part of that movie is a huge part of District 9 also, that's a huge element of that, and that's terrifying. You know, and David Cronenberg drives headfirst into the picking at your own scabs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's fascinated by that, and it's terrifying to me because the whole idea of just like, you know, all of a sudden like the Kafka-esque metamorphosis of yourself, and you're just like, oh my, I'm turning into a bug. You know, like,
And because he's a scientist, he's also fascinated by it.
Right.
So it's not like he's just, oh my God, I'm turning into a bug. It's like, oh, isn't this interesting?
Well, the most fun,
you know, that's a pretty strange.
Well, the fun, there's that fun section of the movie where he's actually all the cool things about becoming the Fly, like
which is like what Spider-Man would have been, right?
Yeah.
Somebody should have
exactly.
done that with Spider-Man. It should be an actual physical.
Yeah, it's like the
metamorphosis.
gymnastics.
Yeah.
I can fuck this chick I picked up at a bar for like 8 hours till she's too tired. You know, like whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, I like when he does the
that got
eating,
personal.
when he shows
I know,
the
right?
thing.
He can't get enough sugar. You know? That's prescient if you think about it. That's a real problem in America these days. Diabetes is on the rise.
That public service announcement. So what are some of the other ones? Like obviously Cronenberg, you know, almost every film of the early ones for the most part.
Are we starting with the general ones and then getting to our deep cuts?
I would say go to the ones that you are really amazed by, like impressed by. I'll lead off if you want, because I watched it again last night because I knew I was going to talk about it, but which one?
Alphabetville, I'm guessing.
Oh, no, I don't even know what that is.
Are you serious?
Alphaville?
Alphaville, sorry.
Oh, Alphaville. Oh,
Sorry.
Alphaville. Yeah, of course I know Alphaville. But no, I don't think of that as horror. I just think of that as a Goddard sci-fi
Man, I was
mashup,
pinning that one for
literary
you.
mashup. I love the film though. But no. I watched. Okay, this is another thing I want to bring up, and one day I hope we can do a topic of this. That directors and that some horror fans might not like this. I don't think that filmmakers are meant to make horror films all the time. I think filmmakers are meant to make movies, and when they have something to say in the horror genre, they should make a fucking horror movie. When you're, and to be honest, if we look at the history of horror films, 90% of the classics are made by guys who maybe made one horror film. Friedkin, Kubrick. I'm going to throw in the guy who I'm going to talk about right now, Philip Kaufman, because I watched Invasion of the Body Snatchers again, and that's a film I'd always loved, and it was on my brain, but I was like, has it aged well? I wonder. I haven't seen it in 10 years. Watched it last night. It's just one of the best genre films ever made. The lighting, San Francisco, paranoia, just this creeping dread. Brooke Adams is just absolutely gorgeous. Donald Sutherland in his other role where he carries somebody wearing red and screams. It's like, no, but I mean, it's really a remarkable film. And this is a guy who probably was very reticent to direct a horror film. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's I don't want to call it laziness, but there is a thing where we fall into, I'm a horror film director. And it's like, by doing that, though, you're basically more or less saying that you're just going to come and keep doing the same thing, even when you don't feel pulled towards it. And so I started, that film particularly made me realize, man, when these guys who are just great filmmakers are pulled in to actually need to say a horror film, and I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even like the genre and he made a science fiction horror film, he brings so much more to the table. And that film, the paranoia of that film, just like the original, also best cameo in the history of cinema. I mean, Kevin McCarthy from the original just runs in, gets hit by a car. They're not the real people, and you're like, oh man, it's a smart film. And I felt
all three of the versions were directed by people who had Abel Ferrara and Don Siegel were neither one of them were known for Donald Siegel, right? Don Siegel.
Ferrera did tons of
Don
horror.
Siegel. Oh,
well, I mean,
he did.
Thriller
The
Killer,
Addiction?
Miss
Yeah.
45.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, his films are
I guess
that
Driller
weird kind of
Killer.
exploitation.
Yeah, Miss 45. I mean, he did Bad Lieutenant. They're more kind of exploited-y. I guess Driller Killer's like the most horror one he did.
Yeah, true.
But it's a perfect, I mean, when it comes to, when we're talking about sci-fi horror, it really is a perfect little movie because it's just the lighting, everything about it, and really good. If you haven't seen it in a long time, rewatch it because I think, when people are pitching all these horror ideas for TV at the moment, I feel like somebody could have constructed a great television show, aka Walking Dead type show about Earth, this happening on Earth, like another version of Invasion of Body Snatchers where a group are left on the run.
Great, Elric.
You can't fall
NBC
asleep.
just bought it.
I know. I do this every episode. I give something that I lose money on.
But mentioning, I thought the Ferrera one was actually really good
Yeah,
too.
it's solid,
I really liked that
Absolutely,
one.
because the setting was original. It was a military base.
It was a military base.
Yeah, no, they're honestly, all three are great. And then there's a fourth kind of one with Nicole Kidman, The Invasion, and it had similar ideas. And it wasn't bad. No, it wasn't bad either.
Yeah,
I agree.
It wasn't bad.
I think the idea is, and again, it talks to what you were speaking about at the start with the definition of like, this is something. The rules are our world, but something has changed. And it's coming to replace us.
And it's theoretically possible.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as far as we know,
Yeah,
As far as we know. We don't know what's out there,
yeah,
and
if it deals with aliens, it's,
and the idea of being replaced. I mean, there's a scene in this film. I'm not going to ruin the ending because it has one of the next. Funnily enough, next to Don't Look Now, I actually think it's my other most shocking ending in any horror film, and both include Donald Sutherland. But it has a great scene where like this replica of him is being formed while he's napping, and he looks down at it, and he's hesitant to kill it for a second, and he looks at Brooke Adams first. He can't kill it because it looks like Brooke Adams, this woman he loves, and then he just smashes down and it's one of the most realistic head smashes you've ever seen on himself. And I don't know, there's a lot going on in that film. It has a lot of layers, and I think I've read about Kaufman that he really didn't even necessarily want to make horror film because he's like, I don't want to be put in that genre and stuff. But when people have something to say, just like any canvas or you should say it, and that's when the best work often comes. So that's one. I'll pass around.
Becca?
Nice. Okay, I will start. Well, since we're starting kind of older, I actually misspelled it. I wrote the bloob.
The boob. The boob is great.
The bloob, I love the
yeah.
bloob.
Yeah.
The bloob is terrific.
Well, it's just like the normal movie, but it's got a nipple on it.
Yeah. Is it bloobing you or are you bloobing it?
So I like
Thanks
both.
for the
I like
memories.
the original and I like the remake as well.
Yeah, I love them both.
Yeah.
I actually just watched the original. I grew
Steve
up,
McQueen?
Yeah.
I got the Criterion Blu-ray of it.
Oh, cool.
And it's funny. Like I love the 86 one totally, and I thought I'd seen the Blob, but I was watching the Criterion. I've never seen its entirety. I was like, I've only seen bits of this. It's really solid. It's really, really good. And that to me is in my opinion, that's the epitome of sci-fi.
What was the
horror.
origin of the actual Blob? It's been so long since I've
In
seen it.
the
I don't
original
remember.
one, it comes from space. In the remake, it's a biochemical weapon
Oh, really?
created
That's
by
true.
the
That's
government.
right. I forgot
Oh,
about
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
it is.
The only problem with
it
then
initially comes, they make it seem like it came
It
from
comes
space,
on a
but it's
meteor
like
because they're testing the launching, and if they
Yes.
could launch it to Russia, because
Exactly.
we were all fighting Russia at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. But yeah, anything where it's like an alien, something alien is introduced and then that becomes a threat. That's the epitome for me of sci-fi horror. So the Blob, Alien, obviously we mentioned before, but yeah, that's a really good one actually.
imagine the 86 Blob if the other Dylan had been the lead. And I don't even mean that as a diss to him because he was awesome in Entourage, Kevin Dillon, but he doesn't really work as the lead in that film.
Right.
If that had been the other
I don't
Dylan,
know.
that might have been one of the best horror films ever
But
made,
he's
honestly.
the sexier Dylan, and you needed to be like the sexier.
Have you
at
seen it
that
lately?
time.
Kevin
pretty
Dillon?
good.
Kevin
At that
Dillon's...
time, he was the
man.
sexier Dylan.
Really? He's got
And
Shawnee
he needed
Smith.
to be kind of, the wild
not talking
man
about her. I'm talking
biker
about Kevin
guy.
Dillon.
He's supposed to be like the guy who runs in and goes, there's something out there, Sheriff. No, there's not, young
I guess,
drifter.
yeah.
It's one of those films.
I'm a hashtag wrong Dylan. I'm sticking with that one. But it is a cool film, and Chuck Jones did it, right? Who also did one of the
Yes.
best
Yes.
Nightmares.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Really good
And
director.
Darabont wrote it.
Eraser.
Oh, yeah.
You're
Did
talking
he?
about Chuck. Oh, I thought you were talking about Chuck Russell, right? Chuck Russell,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, Chuck Russell.
Yeah,
Chuck
yeah.
Jones,
Yeah,
the
Chuck
animator.
Jones, the animator. it's
After
a
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
The
Sorry.
Blob. What else you got?
Let's see here. Older films. Stalker. You guys seen it? It's Russian.
Andrei
No.
Tarkovsky.
Yeah,
1979.
the Tarkovsky movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Is that a horror movie?
I
guess.
consider it such a sci-fi.
Yeah, I guess.
Sci-fi
yeah.
thriller.
It's
Yeah,
definitely a
yeah,
sci-fi.
yeah.
Well, it's thrilling. I had a really funny experience watching that because the first time you watch it, and if you haven't watched it, try to watch it in the theater because it's going to do a lot more for you. But it has more suspense than I think any film I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
The first time you see
Right.
it. The second time it is slow.
It's slow.
Because you know where it's going. You
I've
know
only
that.
seen it once.
But the first time it's incredible. It holds this incredible tension because you have no idea where the film's taking you.
And this one,
Beautiful, too.
I wrote down because, and I'm doing my older films. I'm not to my current ones yet. This one, I loved it when I was a kid, and I haven't seen it since. But since I was thinking of like sci-fi horror, Quartermass in the Pit.
Okay.
Haven't
It's
seen it.
British. Has anybody seen this? No. Wow. Okay.
Is that
Everybody?
future? I thought
I've
that was
heard of
like
it.
an
I've
old
never seen
Hammer type thing.
It is, but it's sci-fi.
Oh, how?
So I need to check it out again.
Okay, all right.
Because I recalled it from my childhood, and I was suddenly like, I really liked that one.
I like your deep cuts, though. This is good.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're dropping Tarkovsky and sci-fi
Yeah,
horror,
yeah.
we're over here talking about aliens and Terminator.
But I will also throw
Rob
in.
knows I'd like to talk about Tarkovsky every
You
week.
can if you
But
wanna.
he called me pretentious on Twitter once.
I like to do it
about my
every
film
week.
I
taste,
call
so
him pretentious every week.
I kind of like dropped back a bit.
I was because I'm wearing the shirt that says Elric on the back.
She
By the
does.
way, I'm wearing Elric's t-shirt.
Hey,
today.
Dave, husband of Rebekah, she's wearing my shirt.
Yeah,
How do you like that?
it's totally hot.
He doesn't actually listen to shows, so
He
that was
doesn't.
sci-fi
I can't get my
in
husband to
itself.
listen to my own show. But no, I was trying to come up with an impression to do of you today, and I realized that my my New Zealand accent is laughable and was coming out.
So
kind
is
of
fine.
It sounded very gypsy-esque, so I couldn't do it. But I was coming up with like things to say, like I like pretentious movies and own a cafe. And
oh yeah, there you go. So. Lord of the Rings is the best movie ever. That's all you needed to say.
Since I'm moving up to the 70s and 80s, I will also say Extro.
Oh, yeah. Somebody actually asked us about that. I don't remember that one. They made two of them, right?
Oh, yeah. The second one's kind of laughable because Jan Michael Vincent was drunk through most of it. Like, they're feeding him his lines off screen. But the original one is batshit crazy. Like, a woman gives birth to a full-grown man in the middle of her kitchen. And the creature is like, he walks backwards, upside down. It's batshit crazy.
Sounds a little demon-seedy.
Yeah. The movie, it doesn't
Julie
really
Christie.
make sense.
Yeah, giving birth to an alien techno baby. Yeah, it's an interesting film.
One of the best posters.
Yeah, it's an interesting film. What did I just say?
Demon Seed.
Demon Seed. It was on my lower list. It's I like Donald Cammell. I've talked about him before on the show, but it's a weird film. It's like it's interesting. The ideas are maybe more interesting than the film. You know.
Well, I think it was back when appliances were the technology of home appliances were accelerating so fast that you thought that eventually your appliances are going to turn against you. You know. But we didn't realize that it was going to be more in our pockets of our phone. It was just the one.
Yeah,
just
the coffee makers.
Just the phone.
They kind of max. Well, I mean,
Keurig's pretty high tech.
Yeah.
They actually make
K-cups are pretty trippy.
That would make a great extra feature, just looking at all the science fiction films and what we're scared might happen and seeing where we're at with that.
We also had the phone ones. I mean, if you think I think the Japan films kind of cornered the market on that with the phone call from The Ring.
Like the Pulse.
And the Pulse. And then there was also one missed call. So, I mean, they kind of
cornered the market on the Larry Cohen did every single phone movie you could possibly ever do. I'm waiting for his GPS to come out, but
I do have a lot of Japanese films on my list, but I will save those. Keep going.
Okay. Hey, Jacob, do you have
still
a couple
not big
of
in
favorites
Japan.
you want to mention?
I have about a million of favorites.
All right.
I was actually thinking about something that would be really fun to talk about, which is the movie Life Force.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
We've talked about the rails back in here before.
That's like vampires in space.
It's
my least favorite Carpenter.
You know, the original
Toby Hooper.
The original title was Space Vampires.
Yeah.
And they changed it to Life Force in production.
Yeah.
Did Becca know that no man on earth would ever say that that film was their least favorite Tobe Hooper film because of what goes on in that film?
Because of the beautiful...
The absolutely... probably the most gorgeous woman ever on screen walking around naked for the whole film.
Okay, well, I was...
Amazing.
But that doesn't make... I mean, the same thing happens in Cat People with Natasha Kinski, but that's at least a good film, So
I was talking to my girlfriend about the Poltergeist controversy.
Hold on, what's the Poltergeist controversy?
Like the Spielberg, Hooper,
yeah.
like whether or not... Because it's an ongoing thing that's going to be going on forever.
Yeah.
And no one's really going to ever know the truth because it does feel so much different than all of Hooper's other movies. It just in terms of the sort of directing. And I showed her the first 5 minutes of Life Force, and literally 5 minutes into it, she gets up off the couch and goes, Tobe Hooper didn't direct Poltergeist.
Yeah. And she's right.
She's probably right.
She's
on
like,
that.
we've solved the controversy because I've seen 5 minutes of Life Force.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy Life Force.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a really interesting movie. It's kind of one of those, it's just so expensive and bizarre, and it's got some amazing model work. And
a weird lead again. Railsback is a weird leading man.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that's the most interesting about Steve Railsback is a phenomenon in my mind that he was the
stunt
lead
man.
in these stuntman and Life Force in these really big movies, and it's just like I just imagine like the executives going, we're gonna $30 million. This guy, that's our guy.
This kind of rednecky.
That guy, that's our guy. We found him in a truck stop. That's our guy.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. But I think you're right. I mean, I think probably Tobe was on set the whole time and probably talked to the actors for probably throughout the whole film, is my guess. Mm-hmm. But like even when you see the mirror and the light scene, Spielberg's directing it. Yeah. And so
the other thing I was going to talk about was the war, because you were talking about Invasion of Body Snatchers, which has like a long lineage of different movies, and War of the Worlds is definitely along that lines of like starting with the Mercury Theater
Orson
radio play, and then the George Powell movie, and then the Spielberg movie. I mean, I have my problems with the third act of it, but I was so terrified when I was watching that movie in the theater for the first time. There are sections of the Spielberg version of War of the Worlds that are just some of the most scared I've ever been in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about how scared Orson made people from radio.
Well, that's like horror on a real level, like a real level.
They really thought it was happening.
People were killing themselves.
People really thought it was happening.
They were like so scared, and it's, and I mean, even the George Powell version is, it's got some elements of it. And I'm sure to a 50s aesthetic,
It's amazing that could have ever happened, that you could have an entire nation kind of alarmed by something. I mean, the people watching Exorcist or Chainsaw for the first time in theaters and passing out if all of that was true, is as close as I think cinema's kind of come.
I don't like to make light of terrible things, but it's like I always like to break things down logically. It's like, imagine you were like, it's like, how did your uncle die? It's like, oh, you heard aliens were coming and you jumped out of the building.
Yeah. No, it'd be crazy.
Orson Welles killed my father.
That sucks. Why would you,
I apologize.
He couldn't handle it. Aliens are coming, so he just...
Yeah, I mean, sure, right? That would be interesting to hear.
It's just, my great-grandfather...
There's always like
but if you think about it, that's like the...
my great-grandfather died when his still exploded. He was making moonshine and his still exploded. And it's one of those things that you just don't really tell people until I tell it live on air right now. Yes,
that's an amazing way to go out, though.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
I don't mean to make light of it, but that is a really
you're
awesome
redneck win.
I think that, dying at the hand of Orson Welles is equally awesome.
Maybe. But before that, back then, he wasn't even Orson Welles. There, no one knew.
Fan of my top 10 deaths, I'll put Hands of Orson Welles.
But if you think about it, Orson Welles maybe made arguably the first found footage horror movie. Maybe, I don't know. Found footage being the audio of it. You know what I mean? Because the whole idea of found footage is that, it's called found footage because it's,
right.
That's trippy.
And that's always been my sort of issue in a lot of ways with found footage, is that because I'm supposed to not only believe that in the reality of the movie, but a reality that this movie exists in that reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But he bypassed that because he did it so early on, like Blair Witch did, where it's like, there was a time when people thought Blair Witch was a real, piece that actually existed.
I was at college at the time, and they hung up signs all over my college. Like, have you seen? Because I was near West Virginia where I went to school, and they hung up signs all over the campuses near there. Like, have you seen these people? Yeah. So it was really trippy. We all thought that they were like actually missing people until they appeared on Letterman. And then it was suddenly like,
Well, and also another problem, when I was just saying I want to care about characters again, is another problem we have now with the found footage, even calling it a genre or subgenre, is the very fact that the very nature of finding the footage means everyone didn't survive. And if by knowing that up front now, after a couple of times, who cares? So somebody would need to reanimate that concept to not be the case where it's just, you find the footage and everyone.
Well, that reminds me, because you're talking about found footage, and I was thinking about Chronicle, and I'm wondering if what you guys think about the pseudo-science fiction, meaning I'm more specifically telekinesis, and because I just wanted an excuse to talk about The Fury and Carrie.
Yeah.
Because
great choices.
We never need an excuse.
Yeah, I would never even
especially The Fury.
Carrie.
Carrie's more like horror, but you could say that. The Fury is definitely...
The Fury is a science fiction horror movie because it's about the science of the mind, and that has, you were talking earlier about, that the end of that movie, Scanner's got nothing on it. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I have to. It's such a frustrating movie to talk about. Have you seen The Fury?
I don't think I have.
You've never seen it?
I think Cassavetes as a filmaker is really blowing up. I really think he's gonna destroy.
It sucks because a lot of people, it's deep cut De Palma, and it's one of those movies where the very last scene of the movie is one of the best parts about the movie, and one of the reasons why you could get people to watch the movie. If they didn't, there are people, I don't know what their fucking problem is, but they don't like De Palma.
That's insane. That's insane.
But it's
even new De Palma?
No, there's a lot of De Palma I don't like. A lot of his films, I always talk about how he walks this weird line between ridiculous and pure cinema, and often he strays. But like Snake Eyes, but he's awesome.
And this movie has, and The Fury has so much. It is a straight up and down science fiction horror movie because it's about it's almost like the X-Men or something. It's like these kids who have this psychic powers, the telekinetic psychic powers.
And it's Kirk Douglas. He's kind of rock and roll back then, looking tough and macho. And
John Cassavetes. John Cassavetes is the bad guy. Yeah, you haven't seen it? You haven't seen it?
I have not seen it.
Oh man, you guys got to watch The Fury. Even if you don't like it, there's enough different kinds of movies all within the movie itself that it's just it's
everyone will like the ending, but
it's just really interesting that he followed up Carrie with his next movie after Carrie was another movie with telekinesis. But anyway,
I want to fire through a couple just because I know I don't need to go in depth on all of them. But, I love Larry Cohen's God Told Me To. It's kind of a bizarre mashup of genres. And I was actually talking to Bob Murawski last night about it, and I thought it'd be the perfect double bill with Gone with the Pope because there's so many different movies in there. There's a few different movies in there, but they're both made with absolute heart. Like God Told Me To is just a great film. And I remember being so shocked when the sci-fi elements came into it, like halfway through. Like you're watching a movie about a sniper, and then suddenly there's this abduction with this amazing UFO scene, and you're like, what just happened? Like, I do not know what just... And I think that's a great film. One of the people whose work I try to show whenever I can, Damon Packard, the kind of avant-garde filmmaker, I genuinely believe this. I'm not just adding this in. He made a 30-minute film called Dawn of an Evil Millennium that if it could ever be made, it would just be like the great... It's just a great... It's shot in like the early 80s, and it's like a 20, 30-minute film, but it's about like a 20,000 years in the future kind of thing. And it's awesome. And he just has this great feel for pace. And it's like this demon comes to Earth, starts chasing the guy in cars. I don't know, there's something about his work. But it led me to one that I really love, Jack Shoulder's film, The Hidden. Mm-hmm. I think The Hidden's I haven't talked about it on the show yet, but that's actually one of my favorite from the 80s.
Kyle MacLachlan in there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. There's actually
it's just like a great action film, and with a great sci-fi kind of, this creature going into your... He looks kind of like an intestine or something, coming into your mouth and taking you over, and it's just... Hidden 2, I don't remember very well. Yeah. But Hidden 1, I really think... I'm kind of surprised that hasn't been remade, because that film's... It's a good... That's not really it's a really tight film. And Jack Shoulder also went on to do our, everyone's favorite Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street.
2. Freddy's Revenge.
Well, at least Clu Gulager's favorite. And then there's some small ones like, Tetsuo Iron Man.
I wrote that one down.
Yeah, it's like, when we talk about indie cinema, look, and I'll say the one thing I will say about Jacob's film, defying its budget. I didn't know there was 3 directors to your film. B, I had no idea what the budget was. I think I saw it on video maybe in New Zealand before I got here. And so I just, you took it for exactly what it is, a movie.
That's great.
I would have been surprised if somebody had told me, it's under $2 million. I would have genuinely go, no, it looks like to me.
He also liked Ryan Reynolds in it, by the way.
Ryan Reynolds is great.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's really
got
strong.
Him before he blew up.
Blew up, exactly.
Yeah, no, you did get a little fat after that. But just kidding.
Wow.
But
thanks, man. I'm not allowed to.
He didn't have but that movie. So you know what I mean. You have to take it. And I'm talking about indies that just completely defy what they were made for. And Eraserhead's obviously one of those classic kind of films, but Tetsuo definitely is. Tetsuo's made with just so much creativity, and it's so like a nightmare. It's like, I think Eraserhead's the other ultimate nightmare film. This is like a nightmare of what happened, a sexual, weird nightmare. Shinya Tsukamoto, I think, made it, and he's made a few other good-looking and interesting films.
Have you seen the second one? And then he also did Tetsuo 2000.
Yeah, I didn't see that, the American one, but he made one film
3000.
Which had a blue tint. I can't remember what it was called that I also liked, but nothing really touched Tetsuo for me. And he also I think he's the actor in it too.
There's another one called Bullet Man.
Yeah, Bullet Man's another film. Everything he makes has a cool energy to it, but Tetsuo actually had something more going on.
If
you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Giant drill penis. In one
yeah, it's a little intense.
Yeah, but it's it's
Lynchian.
Good. Yeah, and I'm sure everyone here would agree with They Live and the thing.
Of course
the thing we don't even have to talk about because that's
Yeah. I mean, more recently, I'd even throw out, because I was debating last year if it should go on my top 10 horror list of the year, and I decided yes, was Beyond the Black Rainbow.
I have that on my...
I have not seen it yet.
All right, so that takes us to our recent horror.
Sure.
Sci-fi horror.
I mean,
are we moving on?
I have some
80s?
international.
Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
I wanted to throw one out. Well, you said Night of the Comet. I was going to talk about Night of the Comet,
right.
but since you already mentioned it, I was going to say the movie Hardware. Have you guys seen this?
Oh, I remember that.
Hardware. Yeah,
Hardware, because that guy, Richard
Stanley,
is quite the character. And his...
Do you know his Moreau story?
The Island of Dr. Moreau story, yeah.
That's my favorite story anyone's ever told me in
the
history of
it's
cinema.
Like Frankenheimer was the one. It's just, and then you're talking about the story where he actually showed up as an extra.
Well, he
worked and got paid as an extra.
Well, he didn't know.
Wait. Okay, you got to tell it.
Should we tell it fast? We'll try, and it could be totally wrong. This is we'll make a version of it that could be right. But basically, he had been working on the Island of Dr. Moreau. If you haven't seen Island of Lost Souls, one of the great horror films ever made. So he's had worked on the prosthetics. Everything was
the one with Val Kilmer
and David Thewlis. And now one other story is that Val Kilmer showed up first day of set and switched roles on the first and made David Thewlis the lead. He was meant to be the lead. Val Kilmer became the bad guy because he was like, no, I don't want to play that role. And they had to go with it. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it doesn't work. Thewlis was hardly a famous name in America, great and naked. But anyway, so Richard Stanley was working on it. I can't remember why he got fired. Or he didn't even get fired. They said, we're delaying the film. I think they were really unclear with him what was going to happen with the film.
Was he the original director?
Yeah, he was the director.
Yeah, he was.
And so he went kind of
did
like
all the developing of it.
Yeah, of everything. And he went on a walkabout because he didn't know what was going to happen. He's like, all right. So he kind of went on like an adventure, and where was it? South Africa.
But that's how they got him to do Hardware.
Yeah.
He was on Walkabout when they were like begging him to come make Hardware because they had this script and they were like, we want to do this, and they had to like.
He's an odd duck from what people tell me. David Gregory, Severin. He made that. He was part of the Theater Bazaar last year. Mm-hmm. He's off on some adventure. I can't wherever they're filming in the middle of nowhere. And one night, after like 6 months or something or 3 months or something of being on this adventure, he sees a campfire ahead, and it's like a scene out of Nightbreed. He sees creatures around a fire, and literally they look completely realistic, like monsters. And he approaches this fire, and he gets up there, and he starts recognizing characters he created, and he's like, what the hell's going on here? And one's like a dog face and all, and they basically, oh yeah, we're making Island of Dr. Moreau. And he's like, oh, no one told me I wasn't directing it. And one of them, basically, they hook him up with a costume, and for the rest of the shoot, he was an extra on the film.
He was an extra on
He was a character in the film for the whole movie to see this whole disaster of a movie play out. Wow. And it's one of those stories and I'm sure there will be a need version if this is written out.
I can get him on or at least try to.
Yeah, I mean, if he was written, it would be, it's an incredible, but it's probably my favorite story about Hollywood, where you're just like, oh my God, what an interesting perspective he must then have about a situation like that.
And did they not realize it was him?
Oh no, he was in makeup the whole time. He never revealed. From what I heard, he didn't reveal himself to anyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't like some kind of legal issue with them doing the film without him, or
who knows? I don't know.
Wow, that's
killing the story, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Creative rights are a dicey,
never heard of it before.
This kind of story doesn't need.
It's a science fiction story. It might not be true at all.
Story. Well, how do they get to the planet? No.
Whatever.
But back
you
to
should
Hardware.
watch the Hardware making up stuff, because there's interviews with this guy, and he is a fascinating dude. He was super young when he made Hardware. Have you seen Hardware?
I saw when it came out. I remember renting it. Who's in it? Dylan McDermott
and Dust Devil.
It's a really impressive movie, and it really holds up. I watched it not too long ago, and it really is fun. And
Dust Devil's decent too, but it's not as good. But
it's not a sci. Yeah, I guess it's not.
It's not a sci-fi.
Yeah, but Hardware is a cool one, and I highly recommend just like learning as much about Richard Stanley as possible.
Yeah.
He lives you guys should definitely get him on this show.
I think what they said is he lives on an island with just frog. There's some weird island in France or somewhere where he lives isolated without people, and there's some. It's around some sort of nature, something that's really rare. I don't know if it's frogs, and that's why he lives on this island.
I like the island of frogs.
Yeah, the island of frogs. He lives on the island of Dr. Moreau. Very strange. Just going to throw it out there.
I don't know why he'd come hang out with us.
Yeah.
But it'd be amazing.
Because he's South African. The Man with X-Ray Eyes is not a perfect film at all by Roger Corman, but it is a fascinating film.
Vincent Milan?
Ray Milan.
Sorry.
You're mixing his two leads.
I am.
Vincent Price and Ray Milan. But it is visually really interesting, and it could be just the best film to remake ever. I know it's been talked about a lot with Tim Burton, and I hope he doesn't do it with Johnny Depp. I'd like somebody else to make that film, but
I want him to put someone else in his films.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's true.
It's interesting how a lot of the sci-fi horrors are about hubris. It's about like man's like relationship to technology and like being better than it and playing God with it. That's I mean, like all of those 50s ones. There's tons of them you can watch just like on YouTube in their entirety.
Right.
Ones about guys inventing like all kinds of movies like The Fly. But, guys inventing all these machines that eventually, they turn them small, turn them big,
Well, let's not forget the biggest influence on our generation of any kind of show or movie. It could well be Twilight Zone for our generation. Yeah, both versions
Twilight
of
Zone is my
and that's where all
thing.
Yes, me too. And so all these stories come under that. Like everything we're talking about has been done in some way. And half the Twilight Zone, the amazing thing about the show is because we all watched it probably so much as kids, half the stories we wouldn't even remember was an episode of Twilight Zone. And we might be thinking it's a movie or something we thought of once, but it was probably an episode of Twilight Zone.
I talked about this on one of the prior episodes that we did where I had this scene in my brain for years and years, and I could never figure out what it was. And I finally described it on some panel I was on for Fangoria, and somebody pointed out it was an episode of Outer Limits.
Yeah, Outer Limits is actually a little more horror oriented, and that's actually say Outer Limits is actually there's 2 episodes that Harlan Ellison wrote for Outer Limits that were the reason that you see Harlan Ellison's name at the end of the Terminator is because James Cameron ripped off these 2 episodes of Outer Limits for the Terminator. And he accidentally told a Starlog journalist this. He was like,
which is owned by Fangoria.
Like, where'd you, shout out. And they asked him like where it's a really interesting story. And it might take me too long to tell it, but it's basically that like he just passingly was like, where'd you get the ideas for Terminator? And he's like, I don't know. I ripped off a couple of episodes of Outer Limits. And then Harlan Ellison, being the litigious man that he is, and like went after him.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And if you see those episodes, it is kind of like, I mean, there's a guy from the future who comes back and he fights this robot guy. It's really cool.
Wow.
We went totally off. I just realized I felt bad. We went totally away from Beyond the Black Rainbow bit because that is
that's because that was more recent. But I mean,
but it's good. I think there's a handful of recent titles that I think I want to figure out how people feel. And I think Beyond the Black Rainbow was a film that I thought was interesting and enjoyed on a visual level. I'd never felt anything like I'd never connected to the people because, like you were saying about, is it in our world's rules? I didn't actually think that was. I felt it was set in a dystopic world that I don't think was really our world. Exactly. Right. That's not to say I didn't think it was visionary and really fascinating.
It's basically the rules of our world.
Yeah.
Meaning like, fantasy has a magic, right?
Right.
And this is like things that are theoretically possible. Right. So
something in this didn't though. I don't know what the connection was that was meant. But I definitely found it like fascinating. I was like, wow, this is a movie. This is awesome. I'm glad somebody got to make this. That kicks ass. I didn't feel like, oh, I care what happens to you next. At no point did I kind of connect in that way.
Yeah.
Kind of like like the first half of Splice. I think it's fantastic. Like the first 3/4 of Spice, I loved. It was one of my favorite films of that year.
Spice.
Some people hated it.
I had annoying moments.
But the last
I was annoyed
act
by
I didn't
his
like.
character because they went over the top to play him as like this out of the box free thinker with his witty T-shirts and
look, it was a little derivative of Cronenberg and stuff, and the characters were a little hip for hip's sake. But there was something in there I really loved until, and then the last kind of few minutes kind of derailed a few of the ideas. But I did enjoy it.
Sex
there's things in there.
But it's that association you have with like childbirth
Yeah.
and the couple. I mean, there is some really nice sort of
there was some good
like,
stuff. Yeah. The emotionally
metaphors
really
and allusions he's making there, like the analogy to like real life, and that's kind of what defines like the best sort of horror and sci-fi, and especially horror sci-fi, is when it's like something that it's like a metaphor for our own like fears, you know what I mean? And
sometimes they're like warnings, like red flags about where we're going, right? It's like, hey, watch out, guys.
It's almost like the only difference between horror and sci-fi horror is just that it's technological.
Yeah.
It's something that we can actually, cause to have man can actually build and create to have happen. And that's why Splice is really...
Did you guys see Cypher, which was his film before? Did you like it?
I did not like it. I mean, Jeremy Northam, I think he's just
I think it's 2002.
Is that Sci-Fi?
Yeah, it's Sci-Fi.
Yeah, it's Sci-Fi. It's Lucy Liu.
Mm-hmm. He made it. It was right after Cube, but before Splice.
Cube is great, by the way.
Cube's
that's one we have
really
to throw in there for sure.
And I like the Cube sequels too. Like I really liked Cube Zero.
I haven't seen those. I mean, are they like prequels or?
Hypercube is it's supposed to take place afterwards, but Cube Zero is. I'm sorry, Hypercube is a prequel. Hypercube.
That's the one.
I'm pretty sure that's the prequel, and then one of them takes place kind of simultaneously, and it's about the guys who have to monitor the cube and keep track of the people who are in there. And there's a girl stuck in the cube.
Oh, kind of like Cabin in the Woods or something.
Yeah. It's very self-aware of it, and it's that's definitely the third one, Cube Zero. I think Hypercube is a prequel. I've seen it, but it was okay.
I've held off because that first Cube is just so great, not knowing anything beyond what those characters know.
And I can't say that the second and third even fill you in a little bit more. I mean, you get a little bit extra when you're watching Cube Zero because the guys are actually working, but they're kind of in the same boat where it's their job to sit there and monitor the people in the cubes. And that's just their jobs. And they don't ask questions until one gets really attached to this one female who's stuck in it and, wants to help her out. Yeah. So, it's a good one.
Dark City is kind of in that vein too, isn't it? I mean, it's because Dark City.
Yeah, I love Dark City.
I love Dark
City
and the Cube
too.
have the same kind of reveal at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Just the Dark City floating in space and the Cube floating in space.
So
That's
great.
that's a really cool twist. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Just the lonely emptiness is that you can never escape it unless you.
Well, plus I remember when Dark City came out. It's one of the few films I saw theatrically like 3 or 4 times. I have yet to watch the director's cut, which I have, but I love the idea of like it's like. I can't remember, were they aliens or I can't remember what the dead people were, but the idea of like let's take this guy and have him wake up and let him and put all the tools there to let him believe he's a serial killer and see if he sticks with that.
Yeah,
and
the film noir roots are so good.
That's a great horror element. That's a good sci-fi horror.
They just basically
idea.
built a little model and study humans
so like, will he be a serial
anthropologically.
killer if we tell him he's one? That's awesome.
And it also helped to cast in the lead a guy who's often cast as a villain rather than a hero. And I think Rufus Sewell with this, his eye and everything just was really interesting in that role. It's a film that I'll always defend that film.
It's also got Richard O'Brien in it from Rocky Horror.
From where? Where's he from? From my hometown.
Oh, he is?
There's a statue
I thought
in
you were
New
going to
Zealand.
say Transsexual Transylvania.
Exactly. Kiwi wrote that movie.
I even wrote down one of his other films, which is why I'm sagging way with Richard O'Brien. Shock Treatment, which is the sequel to Rocky Horror.
That's a weird
film. Highly underrated. I
really?
think
That's a weird film.
It is about reality television before
it
reality
is.
television ever existed.
You're completely right.
Yeah.
It's just like a weird film to watch.
I honestly, I could
it's not
be
as fun to
lynched for
watch.
this. I think it's better than Rocky Horror by far.
We should watch it.
Wow.
I think we should watch it.
Mike C from Icons of Fright would agree with you.
I guess if Rocky Horror was actually scary in any way, shape, or form, it would be considered science fiction horror. Because it is a horror movie.
It's got aliens and they blast off. And
he makes.
They do the time warp.
It is just as good.
It is referencing. I mean, like Rocky Horror references over 55 sci-fi films from the 50s and 60s.
Even just in the opening theme song, right?
I mean, it's like every other line, or every line actually of the opening theme song is referencing a movie, and so it was created by Richard O'Brien in the vein of trying to mimic these 1950s and 60s monster films. So it definitely falls into the vein of it.
It's interesting. I also want to, Slither.
Yeah. We get our Slither in
there. That Slither's a throwback, more connected to like Critters.
Yeah.
And those and the start of Night of the Creeps and movies that like where the thing comes from. We talked about this before where my theory about these space movies are if it comes from space to Earth, it will be good.
Right.
If we go to space, bad. Bad movie. Almost always.
I've got a couple down here where we go to space. Pitch Black, motherfucker.
Pitch Black.
I'm like whatever about Pitch Black.
Are you kidding me?
I'm very whatever about Pitch Black.
I've heard good things.
I've heard good things too.
I'm not Vince Lil's bitch.
I want to see Riddick though. Event Horizon. We go to space.
Event Horizon is
they're already in space.
Yeah.
We never see them on Earth. They're in space.
Oh, so
that's a sci-fi.
If they go from
that's like
space,
Black Hole or some shit.
Okay.
But I think
don't be coming at me with no Black Hole, yo.
But I think it's also you have the scene where they're in the kitchen and they're just like normal dudes eating cereal and stuff.
Yeah.
So
like
you kind of
Alien.
have
Like Alien.
like Alien, like they really human.
No, Event Horizon Event Horizon pushes the horror.
Man,
when you first saw that, it was shocking because that was like a mainstream release, and you're in a theater going, and then there's suddenly like this really intense cannibalistic, satanistic, feel to it.
That's definitely the best
came
Paul
out.
S. Anderson.
I was like a junior or senior in high school, and I went to see it in the theater, not expecting any of that.
Yeah.
I just thought it was like a cool sci-fi.
I think it's a really underrated movie. I think
there was something that released at the same time as it that totally took the box office, and I have to look it up. But it was rueleased back to back with some huge film.
But also around the same time, there was that Barry Levinson sci-fi one too with Sharon Stone. Yeah,
Sphere,
there was like 3 at the same time.
Right.
So, but I don't know. I saw it in New Zealand. Event Horizon did really well.
I mean, I guess you could say Michael Crichton is like a major science fiction horror because all of his stuff is based in
Westworld has got a horrific element to it.
I was just going to say
Jurassic Park,
I just saw Westworld with the Terminator.
I love Westworld
a few weeks
much.
Ago.
I love that
and
film.
I hadn't seen it since I was really young. It's a pretty. I mean, it's a little by today's standards. The pace is a little slow, but it's a really interesting. I mean, that third act, the last 30 minutes is kind of
That's
terrifying.
a movie I would like to see remade.
Yeah.
And I think they're gonna. I think they just announced somebody's remaking it.
Or doing a television
version of it, which should be neat.
Yeah, a television would be quite effective of that.
But Future World's interesting too. Not as good.
Yeah.
The sequel to that with Peter Fonda.
What's the scoop with that? Because I don't know anything about it.
A journalist goes into that same thing. I think it's like an expose thing, and I think Peter Fonda's a journalist. And it's been a long time since.
In the beginning of Westworld, you have like 5 choices. You can go to like Renaissance Land. You can go to Future World. It's like
they go to one of them. Yeah,
the hotels in Blue Valentine or something. Future Room and or in Wolverine
and
Van
Nuys.
Van Nuys.
Van Nuys, the whorehouse in Van Nuys.
Yeah.
It's like Disneyland.
Wow.
I want to mention one other film, Throwback, because it was one of the ones I most wanted to mention today. It's the most intense, most out there film I've seen in years. I'm not going to mention Position. But it's the same director.
Did.
No,
But you
but
just
it's
did.
because it's the same director. Andrzej Zulawski's on the Silver Globe.
I had that on my.
he
I was
didn't
gonna bring that up.
Okay.
because
Did he
We're
even
gonna talk
finish
about
that?
He finished it with an editor, what he could. He was kicked out. Poland became reoccupied by communists, so he was kicked out. But he had been making this film, which has the most incredible
That's the
visuals
one with
I've
the
ever
people
seen.
on the poles,
Yeah,
right?
It's
Yeah.
got me and Andrew Cash and another person went into Cinefamily. We sat there and watched it. It wasn't an easy viewing experience
It's like
because
3 hours long.
It's 3 hours, but also has these parts in between that weren't finished. So the director literally shows up and kind of tells you what happened. But forget that. It has within it, some of the best horror sci-fi scenes, next to none, like even better than Alien. I would say there's sequences and passages, but there is a passage in that film. I think it's about 45 minutes, and it's the best found footage sequence I've ever seen because it treats it in a totally different way, which is that somebody was there documenting the birth of a planet, and these are the first people there, and they had cameras, and you start seeing the footage of how the society grew. And the use of found footage is like literally, and we're talking 30 years before Blair Witch or something, maybe 25 years, and probably
it was 87. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
probably
it was 87 when it finally came out.
Yeah,
or when they finally finished it, but he started in like 82.
It might
or
be. I
something,
I don't know if it's pre-Cannibal Holocaust or not, but either way, it's just so beautiful. It's like a gorgeously made film, but there's parts that don't work. But it's gonna get the Blu-ray treatment this year. They're working on it.
That's exciting.
Like
you can watch the whole
time.
thing on YouTube.
Yeah, have you seen the whole thing?
I've seen most of it.
Okay, yeah. I brought you the DVD.
You did?
I did. But I didn't know if you would have seen it, and so I brought my
Oh my
copy.
gosh.
So in case you hadn't, I brought it for you.
No, I mean
to
YouTube's
watch.
kind of crappy to
All
watch.
right,
a
you're
whole
gonna watch
movie
it.
on.
It's not a good. That was my big reveal. There
Wow,
you go.
look at that surprise.
Where did you get that?
This is actually, I used to work here at Facets, Chicago. Shout out Facets Video. They had it, but it's not the best trans. It'll be better on YouTube, but it's not going to be the Blu-ray. But I didn't know if you had heard of it, and I was thinking, well, if anyone's
I
going to
was
get
actually
something out
going to
of
bring it up, but I didn't know.
You watch that.
horrified.
Look at
and
that.
You keep
Oh
that.
my
and-
gosh, thank you
and
so
do
much,
good
man.
work with
Wow.
that. That was my gift giving moment of the.
Have you sent a copy of Possession to Cody yet?
I haven't yet, Cody. I'm sorry. I'm gonna. Well, I need
Oh
a
my
burner.
God.
I need somebody to help
we
me
just
burn.
We just lost that
I know.
listener.
But
Cody's not
Way to
going to come
go.
The
back
cool
now,
thing
guys.
is, our show is like Oprah. You come on our show, everyone's getting a car. Well, we haven't got a car. Everyone's getting a DVD.
That'd be really great if Oprah just gave out on the Silver Globe and Possession to people. It's like, here's this Possession. They're like,
30 people on poles
is that
stuck
the guy
up their
from Jurassic
asses.
Park? He's in this movie.
There's an abortion or a miscarriage
But watch
scene
the
in a
trailer.
subway.
Yeah, exactly. Watch the trailer on the Silver Globe because it's one of those films that you're like, and read the story about it. In terms of filmmakers getting fucked over by life,
He
you
almost
will
didn't make
not.
another movie after.
That story behind that film is incredible because
the
it's so
Heaven's Gate
political.
of Polish movies.
Yeah, basically,
Wow.
if people hadn't risked their lives to grab the film, because he got kicked out. Hey, you're out of here, buddy, and he's just gone overnight. You're no longer in the country. You're no longer in charge of your film. If editors and actors hadn't just grabbed reels and hidden them, there wouldn't even be this much of the film.
Yeah, because the Polish
So-
government basically banned the movie
it's
and
just
confiscated
that
it,
country's ridiculous. It went through so many changes that it would be communist, then it's not, then it's communist again. So, but his work, I am admittedly a big fan of his work, but there are scenes in that there's nothing like it
Thank you so
I've ever
much,
seen.
man.
Yeah,
I'm so
check it out.
excited about this.
I
This
just
is the
wanted
coolest-
to.
this
I
is
didn't
the
know you had
coolest
heard of it,
present.
so I.
No, this is great. This is great.
But yeah, that was like the last major one. There's a lot of I think there's actually there's one recent film I'd really want to talk about. The first I'll tell you, the first hour might have been my favorite modern film, and that's Sunshine.
Sunshine.
Really?
I was fucking floored by the first hour of Sunshine. Like there's part where Cliff Curtis, the New Zealand actor, is sitting there. He's a doctor. He just wants to feel the sun.
Yeah.
And then he gets fried, and you're just like, this is just a perfect science fiction film, and it's epic and it's beautiful. And then they just, for no reason, throw in this killer horror storyline into it, where you're like, whoa, where did this even?
Intellectually, it makes sense,
Yeah.
but it doesn't emotionally. It's
It
a
wasn't
different
organically
movie
placed,
because all the
you
other
know?
problems and all the major antagonistic forces were just how fucking difficult it
Yeah.
is to put a bomb in the sun.
Right.
You know what
That's
I mean?
enough, right?
Yeah.
Without Bruce Willis, that's enough.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it actually, I've thought about this a lot because it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it just is amazing.
And the end is so tonally incorrect.
Yeah.
It kind of just,
I mean, I still liked it.
Yeah,
I just didn't love it.
Yeah.
And I would have loved it.
And
I would've.
you've heard Tarantino talk about it, right?
No.
He talks about how the first he presented it on Sky Movies or something, and he has this whole interview where he's basically saying the first 2/3 of that movie is some of the best movie he's ever seen.
Yeah.
But the last third of it is such a violation of everything that came before it. It's such a like funny. It basically, you know, it's like High Tension or something. Where it's like
it
the
really
entire
was.
end of the movie is almost like the filmmakers break the contract that they make with the audience, and not in a cool, not in like a Alex Proyas way where you're just like, oh my God, what now? It's Apocalypse and Nicolas Cage, and you know, like I'm still not knowing. I just one of those movies. Alex Proyas does that thing where he goes off the rails, but it's just in this most brilliant, amazing way.
I liked knowing.
Yeah,
I did too. That's right.
But yeah, like, but Sunshine is just such a fantastic movie.
Yeah,
and that's what's so exciting about Gravity.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
Because it's gonna, you know, that he's not gonna probably, you know, it's just that you want it's so terrifying, just the problems you have to deal with. That's what's so cool about like space travel, and like, you know, you don't need an alien, you don't need a ghost on the ship. I mean, you can create tension and suspense and scares just with the sheer problem of like a miscalculation, and now we don't have enough air for all of us. So we have
fascinating.
We have to like basically kill one of us because we have 4 people sitting around this table, and we only have enough air for 3.
I saw the trailer, and the first thing I thought was the tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream." And I thought this tagline should just be, "In space, no one can hear you."
Yeah.
Don't need to scream. No one can hear you. You're just fucked.
Yeah.
You're in space. You know.
And there are sections of 2001 that you can maybe even put in that same.
You know, that's the ultimate technology turning against you. I mean, Hal's an incredible character. You know, of technology, but it's fascinating how I think I'd love to read a book that just analyzes purely how the red flags in our culture are where these films come from.
Yeah.
Like where people are generally scared of where something's going, and this is our way of like saying something. Hey, slow down there. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, The Signal has all of those attributes too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you now? You've made because you're going to make more sci-fi horror. We're not. You know, at some point, right? Okay.
And that's essentially what all the things. I mean, I'm working on a time travel movie right now, and I have, you know, more Signal stories we want to tell. And
really? So Signal could be something that gets expanded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, just because the conceit is something that could, it's not limited to just that movie.
Right.
You know, it's something that's happening to. Those are just 3 stories inside of that world, but you know.
And people don't know because he shot in Georgia. He's actually responsible for the entire Walking Dead. Basically, Walking Dead looked at his work and basically said, "Hey, we should shoot in Georgia and have zombies."
Pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have a couple of deep cuts before we press on. So some of my weird international ones. I've mentioned this film so many times on the show, and I've yet to get you guys to watch it. Tokyo Gore Police.
Yeah.
You guys need to watch it.
I shall never watch it.
I swear, it is
the more you say it, the more repellent.
I know it is the most gorgeous cinematography. I mentioned it during the cinematography day, and I'm mentioning it again now as a sci-fi film. You need to watch.
It's a sci-fi film.
Okay. It is. It's a post-apocalyptic future where they've learned to kind of genetically mutate, and it's all done through body damage. So if like I cut off my finger, a sword would grow in its place and things like that. So the more you damage your body, the more you mutate, which means they can't damage criminals, because if they damage them, they're just going to mutate into something else. So it's very, very fascinating. So Parasite Eve was another one. You guys seen
just
this?
Parasite?
I really want this
Parasite
list.
Eve.
Can I take this?
I've heard Parasite. I've never heard of Parasite Eve.
1997. It's about a girl who's undergoing psychological tests, and that's kind of what the premise of the movie is you're just introduced to her as like she's this like test subject, and then it evolves more from there. But it's a really good one. Meatball Machine is another one, which is about a cult, but it's Japanese. And again, it's very technologically based, but it's about a cult and the people who join the cult and how technology plays into it.
You said a very important word to me, and I can't let the show end without going to Chopping Mall.
I was just about to. I literally was just about to say.
All right, Kill Bob brother, my Kill Bob brother Winowski fan over there.
Wow.
You know, AJ and our other friend Scott, who were in the Signal, did I like a commentary for that?
Oh, really?
For Chopping Mall?
I did not know.
I thought they did it on your website. They did
No.
That's
they
amazing.
did. They
Wow, I
did
did
a
not
commentary
know.
for Chopping Mall. Yeah.
Well, it has been purchased by Rob Hall and is slated for a remake.
Chopping Mall? Mm-hmm. Oh,
but is he going to do the kill bots, or is he going to actually use the mall?
I have no idea. He bought it like 3 years ago, and I haven't heard of anything about it.
Because as a
but
kid,
he's currently holding the rights to Chopping
as a kid,
Mall.
you go to that thinking, oh, it's going to be about a slasher in a mall, and your eyes are like excited, and then these little robots came, and I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. But over years, I started to love it.
Barbara Crampton.
Yeah, Crampton's in it. Yeah, she's
and
good.
Here was
Kelly
my
Maroney.
massive geek moment. When Dave and I first moved to Los Angeles, we wanted to come to the Sherman Oaks Galleria just because like Valley Girl and Chopping Mall and just
Fast
so
Times Times at Ridgemont High.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So many great films were shot there. And when we get there, Commando.
Yeah.
And when we get there,
That's
we
exact-
find an office building with a Fuddruckers in the basement.
Yep.
Nice.
So angry.
But the Fuddruckers is where Arnie had the missile launcher and, and the bad accident. Yeah. And there's, keep
Couple
going.
more. Eden Log. Have you guys seen this one? Eden Log. I loved. It is French.
I've
It
seen Eden
is
Lake, but not
pretentious.
Eden Log.
It is very claustrophobic. It's not Eden Lake. It is a post-apocalyptic future where people can no longer live above ground, so they have built a tree.
Montreal?
And they actually live in the roots of the tree. And the tree gives them oxygen and water because they're actually sapping things off the tree's roots. And it's fascinating.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
it's really interesting.
Very claustrophobic. Technolust, 2002.
Yeah,
Tilda Swinton.
she's an art video maker. She makes video art, mostly that director.
Yeah.
And she makes interesting stuff, very pro-femme, very tech-based.
What's it called?
But
Techno?
Technolust. She plays how many characters in that? Like
4.
yeah, it's a pretty interesting
And she's
film.
all about getting some robot sperm. That's kind of the theme of
Yeah.
the movie. It's
and I think we're all been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
She is the demon seed.
Yeah.
And
Julie
then,
Christie's not the demon.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this, but I wrote it down because I want to. Sound Up My Voice.
Yeah.
Has anybody seen
Yeah,
it?
it's not so much a horror movie, but
No.
yeah.
Oh,
The
okay.
Brett Marling
It
one?
is that would fall
It involves-
actually more into a cult movie.
Yeah, and there
the
involves
science
time
fiction
travel,
of it
maybe?
is actually.
I mean, the
like a
Cranberry song is
question.
time travel.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I actually
Yeah,
thought it
it's
was really
really good.
smart.
It's really
and
good
I could see
movie.
how some people would just, it's hipster shit. Or I don't think so. I think Brett Marling's very talented. I think she's a very smart writer. She's a good actress.
Yeah.
Ingmar Bergman would have gone crazy for that girl.
Right.
It would have been like his favorite actress ever. But it's a smart film. And I love movies that leave you not sure. Like you have to decide, do you believe that in this person's story? Is it
Do you believe this movie is science fiction or not?
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
kind of what's interesting.
That's what
is
it's
that
about,
It's
yeah.
the question at the end of the movie is whether or not the movie you just watch is in fact a science fiction movie.
It's either about a tweaker or it's about
Yeah.
someone from the future.
Yeah.
And that's your call.
I'm
on it.
intrigued.
Wow.
I still want to see. And then the other one that I wrote down that I really want to see is Byzantium.
Byzantium?
Is that the Neil
I've heard of
Jordan
it.
movie?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yes, the new Neil
I thought
Jordan
that was
movie
a
about the
vampire
vampires.
film.
It is, but it was listed as sci-fi.
I don't know. that.
Which apparently, I have no idea how, but I wanted to see it.
But I do see something that you should have mentioned on here instead of that one, which is La Jetée.
Yes, La
Would have been a
Jetée.
better-
I watched
12 Monkeys.
La Jetée. It's what 12 Monkeys is based off of. It's a French film. I watched
Short.
that my freshman year of college.
Yeah, it's
Our
all still
film
frames.
professor made us watch it, and I was so bored and fell asleep because I was like 18 and not into it.
One of the best films
And
ever made.
I really need to rewatch it.
It's one of the
Is-
best films ever
is 12 Monkeys is based on that?
La Jetée.
La Jetée. It's a
Wow.
photo montage film.
1962.
And it's completely hypnotic. And there's one moment where it appears to be. There's one moment in this 30-minute movie where suddenly it looks like a woman's moving just briefly.
Yeah.
But I don't think she is. I think it's a use of the still frame. But it's magic. It's like you just suddenly have seen magic.
Huh.
It's
Almost
a
like a video
great
essay.
film.
Well, no, because it's
Yeah.
they're redoing 12 Monkeys, I think, as a series. And,
Really?
Yeah.
How is that possible?
And Terry Gilliam, of course, has talked smack about it already. But I'm saying,
Yeah.
wait, so 12 Monkeys is
Well, the
not
whole-
actually
I
his own
might talk
original.
smack
The
about
whole
that.
thrill of that movie is the elliptical nature. of
Yeah,
it. So it's
that's
like,
why I was like, how does that even work?
Oh shit, we could kind of mention Time Bandits right now.
Yeah, I
'Cause
wrote
that's a
down
fucking
Brazil,
cool film.
but
That
then I
scared the
was
shit out of
questioning
me.
if
Yeah,
Brazil
Time Bandits
a
was
time-
scary. That had scary
Brazil
elements.
disturbed me, but it wasn't scary. And then the one that is a comedy horror sci-fi, Attack the Block.
Attack the Block.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good
they
modern
nailed
one.
it.
Love that movie.
They did
That's
a
a
great job
so
with that.
funny. I
That's
love
the
that
closest anyone's ever made to the feeling of like Critters or one of those 80s films we would have just taken for granted as kids.
I
and
can
grow
talk
up and they
about
don't
this
exist.
now. One of my friends was in town in July, and he was actually pitching a Critters remake.
Oh, that's right.
To
Right,
New Line.
Oh, really?
And it was a cool script and everything. It was a cool concept, and they ended up passing on it. They decided that they didn't want to do a remake of Critters
Because they
And
wanted
that's
to wait
why
for
they-
my pitch for Critters vs. Ghoulies.
Okay.
I always thought that was going to be hot. Who wouldn't want to watch
Yeah.
Critters vs. Ghoulies?
Critters
Let's
versus
do this.
Ghoulies.
Jacob's in.
Let's do
We can
this.
get some
I'm in
elves in it.
theory.
You come down, you take the shape of a man. That man has to go to the bathroom at some point, and guess who's waiting for you, motherfucker? Ghoulies! Jim Warnowski's available and needs to work. You hear me, Jim? I want to mention one more before I'm out, and it's not really horror, but it's one of the best science fiction films you will ever see if you've never seen it. It is one of the best character films ever. The Man Who Fell to Earth, Nicholas
Yes.
Roeg, David
David
Bowie.
Bowie.
That film has just got some of the most prophetic and interesting things. It's about like a guy comes down and creates a kind of a Polaroid film and basically becomes rich and has to deal with being the horror of this film. The reason why I bring it up, the horror of this film is trying to be human, and being stuck being human is horrific for this alien. And even there's a scene where he's watching like 10 TVs at once and trying to take in all and he's horrified about humanity. And it's just an absolutely
It'd be a good double feature with Brother
film.
from Another
Oh
Planet.
yeah. John Sayles. Yeah, John Sayles.
That's a good one.
So there's this is a really rich subgenre, and we could do other shows just on this topic. I would say, but
Does
I'm sure we'll break it down.
remember Pandorum?
yeah. I thought Pandorum was pretty good.
I don't
Little
remember
S&M-y?
it. I remembered seeing it.
I don't remember. I saw it like a year or two ago, and I don't remember a thing about it. I was talking to Bruckner about it, and he was he's like, well, the in the end when he does this, I'm like, wait, how do I not remember that? I just watched it. I have the Blu-ray.
And when I was looking, when I was researching the show tonight and like Googling like sci-fi horror, it kept popping up, and I was like,
it's cinematic rohypnol.
No, I saw it.
It's drunk guys Event Horizon. It's like a kind of a poor man's version of Event Horizon. It has some really nice stuff in there, but it's also it also felt a lot more forced. Lots of S&M, like black leather.
Really.
Yeah.
You just it makes you forget. It's like the thing in Men in Black that
I gotta rewatch it.
I just want to mention one more movie that scared the living shit out of me. But it's also one of the best movies I've ever seen. And it's science fiction. Is the movie Children of Men.
Oh, that's so good.
I had panic attacks when I was watching this movie the first time. The whole last part of it is terrifying.
It is.
Like just the antagonists are so scary, and just the fear pressing down that at any point he could be. I don't know. That was
interesting.
Maybe that wouldn't be considered a horror movie, but I felt.
Well,
terrified.
if you're scared,
there's some terrifying stuff in that. I mean,
he just really took us to the next level.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think again, I think it's whatever gets you, whatever gets under your skin. That's why I think horror is so subjective and so personal, and the best horror films are always made that way. Like,
that's the same guy who made Gravity.
Yeah. That was his last movie, Children of Men. Okay, so before we wrap up, let's tackle a couple of quick questions. I went up on
questions or news if we have anything.
We don't have
I don't think we have news, so we're just two questions.
I will say the big news for this week has been like things pouring out of TIFF.
Oh yeah, and a lot of good word, right?
So yeah, I'm begging Morgan Peter Brown to get me a copy of Oculus, because that's the one that everybody is like going crazy over.
Far more important than that, the Sacrament getting good word.
Sacrament's been getting really good press, and Green Inferno.
Green Inferno, a film that none of us would hear, would be big fans of, and yet I'm very interested in it.
I had been very skeptical of it as soon as Eli Ross makes a cannibal film.
I was impressed as soon as I heard he went into the Amazonian jungle, and like that was interesting to me. I care not for Sir Eli, but as soon as I heard that's how he was making the film, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Even if it's a bad movie, I want to know how he survived. It's very Herzog,
right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's why he was doing.
That's been kind of the big news.
Yeah, a lot of good reviews. Almost Human too.
Fantastic Fest is coming up soon, so I'm sure we'll be getting some more news out of that.
Yeah, Almost Human is another
Almost
one.
Human, I want to see. Yeah,
good word on all of these films, which is exciting because we want good original horror filmmaking.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Yeah.
Pretty psyched. Is anything opening soon? I mean, like,
yes, this Thursday.
Insidious 2.
Tomorrow night I'm seeing Insidious 2. Not tomorrow night at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go
Are you and Matthew Carey?
Matt Carey Holmes, because he jumps out of his seat like a girl, and I love going to movies with him.
He told me that
I get to reinvent horror by sitting with him every
Matthew
day.
Carey Holmes feels that we have made him the butt of many jokes on this show. So
it's because he's a dumbass.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. It's because he's on the Fog remake. That's really the truth.
That's
the butt of its own joke. No, he's really the best person I've ever gone to a movie with, because how he reacts so purely, which I can't anymore. Sometimes I can, surprise myself, but I am usually looking behind the curtain a little bit some of the time. With him, I really love it.
Maniac with him.
That was a bummer.
He was a little talky.
Yeah.
I'm still angry about that. You need to rewatch Maniac with me.
It should be a cinematic thing, right?
Yes.
But seeing things in the theater are a lot of fun. And look, it'll be really interesting to see how Insidious 2 goes.
Yeah, I'm seeing it at the Alamo Drafthouse since I'm flying back to the East Coast. I am seeing it at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester this coming weekend, so I'm pretty psyched.
Right on.
So what questions do we have? Hopefully we can include Jacob in this.
Let's see.
Game?
Then we'll end with the game.
Oh yeah, got to end with the game.
Some guy named AJ Bowen wants to know who your favorite actor is.
Scott Pythers, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes, that was to Jacob.
I want to ask, can we deviate? Can I ask you who would be an actor?
Scott Poitras.
Yeah, you got the No, who you haven't worked with. I'd be curious who's somebody who you would who's still alive, you would just think would fit perfectly in the kinds of movies you would like to make.
I've always wanted to work with Kurt Russell, but
Nice.
it'd be really hard to get him because I think he's really picky. I don't know. I besides Scott Poitras and AJ Bowen, my favorite actor of all time is Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Right on.
And that's the correct answer.
Yeah.
for all of us is Bill Murray. Bill Murray's basically the best fallback you can have.
I think he's phenomenal.
And Kurt Russell, they're both.
Kurt Russell, those two guys
together in a science fiction horror film. Boom.
Boom.
Wow.
There's the pitch. Right on.
I like it.
Okay, so Kyle has a question for Jacob. He wants to know, wondering what it was like selling The Signal as having multiple directors, although it's not an anthology film, meaning separate segments without being a different story altogether. I guess that goes two ways. One, for investors, like telling them that, hey, there's 3 people directing this movie, like getting the money for it. And then Magnolia is the one that ended up picking it up. But what was it like selling it to a distributor, knowing that there's 3 directors attached as opposed to just one?
You mean after we finished it? I mean, because it really was just. I mean, they're not really separate. I mean, I know that. I mean, we were all on set for every minute of it, and in fact, we shot each other's segments. I was the DP for the other 2 segments. I was actually I was filming every single shot.
And tonally, only one of them feels a little different, but purposely, so it's a little heightened and it feels like almost Todd Solondz-y. Like there's that weird comedic element, which was great.
Well, that was just because when you get to that part of basically a grand LSD experiment in society, it has to go a little bit crazy like that.
It was cool.
I mean, I guess we had made so many things together, and it was just kind of like hanging out with your friends and working with your friends, and we worked on the whole thing together. And even though, you'd have a director who was sort of in charge of that section, we would sometimes film different shots in the actual, like a shot from mine and a shot from Dave's in the same setup. You know what I mean? So we would be like trading. So it was a really collaborative process. So.
But did people understand that? I guess is the question. Like, did the people who matter say it's money or distribution, or did you guys just kind of hide the fact it wasn't important to sell it like that?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it was just it was just a really interesting process, and I think that it was really fun to talk about as a advertising thing or whatever, because it's a really unique process because it's not an anthology. It's not like we went off and made our own movies and put them together. It was like we all made movies together, and we're all very singular directors with like very independent visions, and we work together on something. So and it wasn't really a problem as far as getting the money because it was such a low budget that such a ridiculously low budget. And then as far as selling it to Magnolia, it didn't really seem to be an issue. I know that the only issue that we sort of ran into was that afterwards everybody wanted us to work as a 3-part team.
Right.
And that felt so unique to that movie that it seemed difficult to try to make another, because the movie's about perspective. So it kind of made sense almost after the fact.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I couldn't fucking stand working with those guys. Just assholes.
And if for anyone who's listening, David Bruckner made the first storyline in VHS 1, which is my favorite of all VHS films. That story he did with the creature, because it's just a great creature.
He's now sold 2 movies at Sundance where he's part of several multi-director.
Oh, that's true.
That's interesting. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman named Ian who asks, I have a question. Were there alternate designs for the costume/mask for the Lord of the Rink? Which I assume is
that's the
killer
slasher from the Super Psycho. What's the movie with the clear plastic mask? That's where those
Strangers.
No, the
Alice,
old
Sweet
Alice Sweet
Alice.
Alice.
Sweet Alice,
Alice
yeah.
Sweet Alice was like the biggest inspiration for that.
Cool.
And I had a specially designed. It was like a combination between that and the Burger King mask. The Burger King guy, because that guy's terrifying.
That guy is terrifying.
He is
That
so-
and on the West Coast we have that guy for Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
The guy, the big circular.
Or the
head
Six
guy.
Flags guy, the old guy.
Oh my gosh, that guy used to be so disturbing.
Yeah. It was basically designed by an artist, and then we had it molded, and I wanted it to seem like it was a mask that could be sold at like toy stores. And then, but as the paint starts chipping off and you can start seeing through the clear plastic, like something about clear plastic masks is like terrifying when you can see somebody's face underneath and it's just like their face is distorted. There's something really fucking scary about that to me.
Yeah.
So
Right on.
yeah.
Alrighty, Rebekah, let's do this game because
I'm
as
trying to
usual-
remember the mask from The Strangers now. Hold on, I'm Googling.
That was all our
they
questions?
weren't clear. They were white.
Yeah, we've drank a 6-pack of beer and I need to pee really bad.
Yeah,
so
me
we need to
too.
get to
I
the
just
game.
downed 2 bottles of water, and I have
All right, this is a
plane to catch,
fast
guys.
game, so don't worry.
This it's based off a game that I used to have when I was in college, and it was a Planet Hollywood game. And the way that the game was set up was you would be given a topic and you had to go around in a circle and say, so like if the topic was Susan Sarandon movies, you would have to go around in a circle and quick fire Susan Sarandon movies until one person was out and then the other person was out and so on. And so I thought we would play this. My husband informed me that they do something similar on Doug Loves Movies, which is another podcast, but I've never heard that show. So we're doing our
And we would
intro.
you would do like, mutant babies and you'd go until you may come up with 7 and then you
What
might
if I was going to do
X
Mutant
out.
Babies today?
Then I would have
I'm really
blown
glad
it.
you didn't. I would lose.
I'm not.
And the problem is because she's going to count down like a few seconds. That's when your brain stops working. So unfortunately, it could be over very quick.
5 seconds to say a title or you're out.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
is fun.
So because I'm getting ready
guess.
to
Let's do it.
travel, today's topic is horror road movies, horror movies that take place on the road or in a car. And go Elric.
Joyride,
Monster Man.
Jeepers Creepers.
The Hitcher, Rutger Hauer, Eric Ray.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm just
No
not
stalling.
the remake.
Road Games.
I'll take it.
The Hitcher remake.
I was going to say that. That's a good
we
one.
agreed that these would work when we played before.
Near Dark.
You're good.
Oh.
You're good at this.
Joyride 2.
Is there a Joyride too? I didn't even know
there
that.
it is.
Jeepers Creepers 2. Is there a second one?
Yeah, it's
That'll
a
count,
traveling
that'll
football
count,
team.
yeah.
I'll take it.
I just have like a block right now for some reason.
It's hard.
What's that Aussie movie? The Exploitation
I
one
thought it
with
was Road
Jamie Lee
Games.
Curtis.
That's
and,
Road Games.
Oh, Road Games.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Stacey
okay.
Keach one.
You're out, Elric.
Yeah, I don't even know anymore.
Rob?
Oh, man. Is Wolf Creek on the road? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're on the
Wolf
road.
Creek.
Yeah, they're traveling. I would accept that.
The Thelma and Louise. You said Susan
Rob
Sarandon.
Rob wins. Wait a minute. He did say
Rob
Susan.
is Victor.
Yes.
you
See, that's
could
the problem with
also
going
said-
first.
I would have said Dead End.
Dead
is one of my
Dead End was
favorites.
good.
That one, yeah.
I was trying to think of Road Stop or something. There was some shitty direct-to-video.
there's one with Jamie
Wrong
Allen.
Turn.
Rest
Stop. I was trying to
Rest
think.
Stop.
My brain.
Rest Stop. They're all
What others? There's the fun thing about doing this game will be that this is what we're going to do. From now on, we're going to always end unless it's like a major cinematographer, John Carpenter or something. We'll end with this game, and then the ones we're don't remember, write on our wall and call us out.
This
on.
is going to be. This is
tell
a
us.
total way homer game because
is.
you know that on driving home you're going to think of like 100.
I know.
You're gonna
Horror
be like,
movies
How
that
did we
take
forget
place
that?
on
I know
the road.
it'll drive you crazy.
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna. I know that the second I walk out of this room, I'm gonna. It's just they're all gonna just flood
It's
into my
gonna
brain.
happen.
Yeah.
So, okay, guys. Well, I think that's our show.
Yeah, this has
That
been
is
really
our
great,
show.
and it's been great. I'm really glad you came, and
Yeah,
I'm
Thanks
sure
for having me,
Jacob.
guys.
we
This
will
is really
find a way to
fun.
get you back on again because we'd
Are
love
you
to do
guys
that
doing
too.
a show next week?
We
We
don't
don't
know.
know yet.
Yeah.
I have an idea. Maybe not. Rebekah won't be
yeah.
here
I won't
next
be here,
week.
guys.
so-
I am taping. I have 2 conventions, a film fest. If you're in the West Virginia area, please come see me at Shaka Khan. Quite possibly the greatest named convention ever in the history of conventions.
amazing.
And I'm also taping a show for NBC, which will be airing end of October. So I will be giving more details about that after I tape it.
Right
And
on.
I guess really quick plugs. Friday, we have 2 slasher films playing at Jump Cut Cafe on 16mm film. It's Friday the 13th, so we're showing 2 films. I will not tell you the title. It's Friday the 13th that we're showing them. And then the next
I'm so
day...
upset I am missing the VHS swap. I
Yeah,
have to
then
say.
Sunday we're going to have at 5 o'clock on Sunday, we're going to have a VHS tape swap. I have no idea if anyone's going to come with tapes. I hope they do. But after that, we're going to be showing Rewind This, the new documentary about VHS tape collecting, and it should be really fun. I'm excited to see the film anyway.
Yep.
So hopefully dust off your big boxes and come on down.
And my one plug is not this Saturday, next Saturday, the 21st, September 21st, midnight screening of Larry Fessenden's Wendigo at New Beverly.
Son of a bitch. I'm missing so much cool shit.
So Larry Fessenden's in town next week.
He might be. He might be.
Yeah.
Let's just put that out there.
Yeah. Hey, if you're listening, Larry, just know that
Come
I've
see
been
it. If you're
there, Larry,
wanting you
call
to
me
be
back.
here for a while.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Thanks.